Sometimes there are moments in life when you become a witness to the skills of other people, to which it is even hard to believe. For example, someone can carry things on a bike in a cart that exceed the weight of the person 2 or 3 times. Or, for example, you see that someone can shoot a bow with their feet, and at the same time hits the target. In such cases, thoughts like how is this even possible? Or it's amazing how in general, you cannot admire it or something similar arise in your head. Our main character was the complete opposite of such people. No one noticed him, no matter what he did, and he was very tired of it. But one day, as it happens, in one room similar to a warehouse, he found an unusual book in a white binding and with a strange symbol of a network of patina painted in black and yellow stripes. His life has completely changed thanks to this book. The book was unusual. When he read it, then everything he read happened to him. He could write down his experience in a book, and anything would become a miracle. Our hero was a guy with dark blue short hair and the same color eyes, and he was chosen as the new author of the Book of Experience. The guy worked in a diner, although this place was a little hard for him, but nevertheless he liked this place. A beautiful young girl with red hair worked there. She cooked delicious food for elementary school students. In general, the cafe could receive a small income thanks to elementary school students, but of course the income was meager, which caused the cafe to suffer. And then one of the simple days, a guy with a short black hairstyle, as usual, was sleeping at one of the tables. By the way, the cafe itself was empty now. The red-haired girl slapped the sleeping guy on the back and said that he was drinking here again, and could not deny it, because she had just caught him red-handed. At this time, RGG Lee Jong-seok, a 19-year-old guy, was opening some paper, namely receipts for expenses and debts. Recently, their income has become quite small and only expenses and debts could be seen in the checks. Seeing this, Jung-seok thought that it would be best for him to join the army after school. Jung-seok prepared everything for a trip to the bookstore. But during the exit, a red-haired girl shouted at him that he was going to the bookstore again. And that sleeping guy said it was a bookstore. But the redhead snorted and replied that now was not the time to read books. The guy himself would never give up the idea of reading books, because this is one of the cheap pleasures. Walking down the street, where a fresh breeze was blowing and blowing his hair, he looked at his feet, thinking about his own. At that time, he met his classmates, namely a red-haired girl with the same eye color, in a school uniform, a guy with yellow hair that shone like gold under the rays of the sun and combed back, a simple guy with brown hair, a plain girl with black hair and glasses, and a fat boy with a kind smile and black hair and black eyes. A red-haired girl saw Jung-seok, immediately ran to him and said they were now heading to Sam to study English, and brown hair shouted that they wanted to eat somewhere after school. Jung-seok said he was heading to the bookstore, and hearing his chestnut hair exclaimed in surprise that he couldn't believe that someone was continuing to go to the library. And the fat guy asked the guy why he keeps using books if he can use the internet and read all the books there. The yellow-haired one said not to touch the kid, because he was doing everything right, but for some reason he had a dissatisfied expression on his face. He and the others passed by while the redhead was saying goodbye to Jung-seok, and then followed them. Jung-seok was bad at a lot, and the only thing that pleased him was reading books in a bookstore. Entering it, he greeted an old man with glasses who was reading a newspaper, and he greeted him in response and said that the guy came early today. Jung-seok asked if there were any new books, and the old man replied that they were inside. Let the guy sort them out in order. Jung-seok went into the library and found bags of books. It was one of the most beautiful moments in his life. He didn't know what was inside, so when he opened this bag, he felt like he was opening some kind of treasure chest. But of course sometimes there is nothing new in the chest, and today it seems there was such a case. Although, after looking more closely, he found the book that we described at the beginning, white with a pattern of black and yellow cobweb. The guy took the book and seeing that he had no title opened it, but there was nothing inside. Everything was empty. But suddenly it lit up and there appeared an inscription asking him if he wanted to write his experience in the Book of Experience. Looking at the inscription in surprise, he wondered if he had any experience at all. Then, after thinking about it, he decided to write something in a book for the sake of experiment. And immediately there was an inscription saying that he had become the new owner of the Book of Experience. After Jung-seok became the new author of the Book of Experiments, he wanted to test what the book is capable of. But to do this, he had to write his experience, and to write an experience, he had to remember something, and in general he didn't know what to write yet, so he decided to go to a secluded place. He had one such place, in the mountain, and now he was climbing it. There were a lot of thoughts, and also no one could interfere, not to mention that if you concentrate, you can also remember moments of your life here. Jung-seok was wearing an orange hoodie and comfortable gray jeans, and carried a backpack on his back. Looking around for a place to sit down, he remembered the bright light that flashed after he wrote something on the book, as well as the inscription on the book that asked him if he wanted to write down his experience. Climbing the laid ladder up the mountain, he then passed the rocky terrain where the ladder ended, and then almost fell when the stone on which he stepped slipped. Screaming in pain and sliding down, he still did not lose himself and grabbed the first root from some tree sticking out of the ground. A little more and he would have flown into the cliff that appeared before his eyes. With a sigh of relief, he began to climb back up. Some time later, he finally reached the place where he had a view of the hills and mountains filled with greenery and life, as well as the city, which could be seen from here quite small. After looking at all this beauty for a few minutes, Young-sok sat down and opened his backpack and took out a book and a pen. Putting the book on the stone and opening the right page, he looked again at the inscription asking him if he wanted to write down his experience in the Book of Experience. After scrolling through this line in his head several times, he took a pen and wrote on the book the question of how to record the experience. The blank page lit up white, which surprised the guy, but then an explanation appeared in the place of the glow saying that when a guy writes down his experience, he turns into experience points. Of course, Jong-suk became interested in what kind of experience points and how to use them, and therefore he wrote a question on the book how he can use experience points. The book in response sent him a message that when he would record his actions, he would get points. Looking at the answer, Young-sok wondered if the book had other experienced owners. But then he wrote on the book that the experience he gets gives him the opportunity to do some things. In response, having received yes, he wrote down his question again, saying that all the experience that he gets affects him only positively. Of course, the book replied that yes. What kind of experience did Young-sok want to gain? Thinking about it, he remembered his coffee shop, where there are almost no people, except of course 2 employees. Then he asked writing in the book if the book has a recipe for tteokbokki. The book replied that he had the experience to work with food. Then the guy asked what about tteokbokki and the book said that he didn't have that. And then another recording came out telling him to write down his wishes. The guy finally decided to try out the book and wrote about today's experience. Today he found a copy of this book in a bookstore and wrote down his experiences in it. The book for his record gave him 25 experience points. Seeing this, the guy exclaimed in surprise that it was too easy, and then raising his head and closing his eyes, he began to remember one of the cold days he had experienced. That day it was especially cold outside, because the guy put on a yellow jacket and scarf. On the way, he met a homeless man in light clothes and with a beer on his hand lying on the ground. The homeless man was snoring, but he was curled up like an embryo, probably because of the cold. The smell from him was terrible and Young-sok just couldn't help but cover his nose with his hand. Then after thinking about it, he decided to call 119, because if you fall asleep in this weather, you can freeze to death. The ambulance is most likely to dress up later than usual, because it was icy expensive, so the guy decided to give his jacket to a homeless man. The homeless man woke up and thanked him, and Young-sok told him that an ambulance would come soon, but in the meantime the man should cheer up. He also tied his scarf so that he wouldn't die for sure, deciding that this was a great experience. The guy wrote about it in his diary and received 25 experience points for it. The book said that these glasses were for the fact that he wrote his experience of saving a person. Smiling, Young-sok decided that he had figured out the basics and decided that this was just the beginning. He decided to write a more complicated story. He wrote about another incident recalling that day. It was another simple day and a huge truck was rushing on the road at all stages. When Young-sok turned around, he saw that an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Seeing the truck rushing straight towards the pedestrian and realizing that the old man was in danger, Young-sok screamed with all his might. A truck was racing on the road, and an old man was walking on a pedestrian. Young-sok shouted calling the old man Mister, and he just turned to look at the truck and then Young-sok jumped towards the old man and dragged him with him to the other side of the truck. They both fell to the ground, and the truck was able to brake only after a pedestrian had passed. The worried Young-sok then asked the old man in a green cap and the same color of sportswear if he was okay, and the old man, sweating all over, thanked the guy. Young-sok breathed a sigh of relief while the old man asked for his forgiveness. His hearing had deteriorated recently. Young-sok, smiling, asked the old man to look at the traffic light next time before crossing the road. After writing all this experience, the book wrote to him in response that he received 1,500 experience points for saving a life. Seeing that this time they gave less experience, Young-sok realized that even if this is a unique case, if the experience is similar, less experience points will be given. After thinking for a while, he looked at the pigeons sitting not far away. What kind of experience does he want to get? The galubas were walking just a couple of dozen centimeters away from him, and therefore, smiling, the guy took out the chocolate and broke it a little, crumbled it, and fell asleep in front of the birds. Looking at how peacefully these pigeons were eating chocolate crumbs, he began to recall a recent conversation with Rodney. When he returned from the library and went to his room, he heard voices in the corridor, coming from another room. He stopped and listened. One of the voices was saying that if things continued like this, they said they would take the mortgage payment for the house. The voice asked to sort it out, because working at such a pace they will only lose money, not earn. Besides, they still had to send their Young-sok to college. With this in mind, he first decided to save the restaurant. Getting up from his seat, he went home, and in the evening, when everyone fell asleep, he opened his book again in his desktop. Taking a pen in his hands, he wrote that he wanted to become a good cook. In response, they wrote to him that the basis of cooking is in taste. Salty, sweet, spicy, sour, and bitter, 5 types of taste. After that, the book asked him if he would use experience points, and the guy of course agreed and fell asleep. He woke up because of a scream telling him that he would be late. The voice told him that he had already prepared breakfast for him, so he should quickly go down and eat and then go to school. Massaging his aching head, the guy wanted to get up, but suddenly an itchy pain seized his arm. Frowning and clenching his teeth, the guy looked at the experience book, where there were congratulations that he had earned 200 points of culinary experience. He got a super taste, he got a mordant, and he got a knife master. He felt after reading the book after his request. In his dream, he gained the experience of the chefs he had read about. Getting up from his seat, he went down and went to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and found there a container with tteokbokki sauce. After trying it, he sadly said that it was a failure. The black-haired man looked at him, not understanding what he was saying, and the guy himself thought that this had become the norm. The sauce had a very weak taste of sharpness and sweetness. He immediately took ketchup and mayonnaise and expertly added them to the sauce, and then began chopping radish, himself surprised at the skill of his hands. He cut as fast as they show in programs or films about chefs, and when he also began to thinly slice the sliced round radishes, he looked at what was happening with bulging eyes. Of course, the black-haired man was as surprised as he was. A girl with brown hair ran towards the kitchen after hearing a scream, and shouted at two guys, asking what they were doing with the sauce they wanted to sell. Young Sok gave a spoon to the girl and asked her to try it. After tasting the sauce, the girl looked at Young Sok in surprise, saying that it was amazing. While the girl and the black-haired guy were wondering about the delicious sauce, Young Sok said that he was going to school. At lunchtime, there were a huge number of children in front of the diner, shouting to be given spicy rice cakes. The black-haired guy and the brown-haired girl had a lot to do. In the evening of that day, these two, having counted the nails, happily said that they had earned $350. With such a bet, they could even get rich. The guy said it was a shame that they had so few ingredients, and the girl exclaimed that the spicy rice cakes were very good. Young Sok listened to his relatives with a satisfied face and thought that his culinary skills had reached a completely different level. It didn't make any sense at all. Putting his hand on the book, he thought about writing to him next. Maybe studying, or acquaintance, or is it better to train anyway? Which of these three will help him the most? Young Sok, asking if any learning experience was available, wrote about it in a book, and the book asked him what type of learning experience he wanted. And Young Sok wrote it down, and immediately he wanted to sleep, and in a dream he found himself in some strange space. 5 shurikens were flying towards Young Sok. The guy smoothly raised one hand up and one hand down, thought about manipulating the air, and a gust of wind pushed all 5 shurikens flying at him. Behind the shurikens appeared some people similar to the bandits of the time of Murim. And in general, Young Sok himself was also dressed in clothes from the time of Murim. 2 bandits attacked the guy, and one of them, a black-haired bandit, swung his saber vertically, but Young Sok easily dodged the sword, and then with a blow of his hand to the center of the saber broke his blade on the floors. After that, a horizontal blow from another bandit, already with white hair and wearing a white cape, immediately followed, but Young Sok only bent down a little, dodging this blow, and during the ascent hit the bandit right in the jaw. After making a circle, the guy sent 2 bandits flying with a blow of his palm, and Young Sok himself wondered where he was. The boy was awakened from his sleep by his mother's voice calling him. She said he would be late for school, so he should hurry up. Young Sok himself was surprised and couldn't believe that it was all a dream. He had never seen such a vivid dream. He fell asleep reading a book. Looking at the book, it was written that in Chinese training sounds like kung fu, and then it was written that he mastered martial arts by helping Mudang Group. It was the first time Young Sok heard about the fact that training is kung fu. Now he understood why he had that dream where he was doing kung fu. A voice shouted at him to go down faster. He died there or something, and Young Sok decided to take a shower and go down faster, otherwise he would still get from his parents. After the shower, he looked in the mirror and was surprised to notice that his body had become embossed. Why? He had 6 cubes. The muscles bulged very harmoniously. Was it because of dreams? When he dreamed that he became a chef, then his culinary abilities improved, and after a dream where he was a student, his body also changed. Young Sok wondered if he should sleep in order to gain experience. But then after thinking a little, he decided that he gets experience by reading a book, and in order to adapt to what he read, he needs sleep. Going to school, he thought about the book of experience, which gave him answers to his questions about experience. But no matter how much the guy asks, the book does not tell how to be his master. Manipulating the air in his dream was an ability of the Mudang Group. Stopping and raising his hands, he asked himself, has he become stronger? There was a soda can lying on the road, and kicking it, the can flew up, and when it went down, Young Sok jumped and hit the can like a football. The jar flew twisted and fell right into the trash can, which was a few meters away from the guy. Seeing this, Young Sok involuntarily thought that he should try football. But at the same time, he felt someone behind him and quickly turned around and dodged, causing the guy who attacked him to fall to the ground. Looking at the guy with black hair with a hint of brown, big eyes and a square jaw, Young Sok recognized him as Young. Young stood up in anger, saying that he was in pain and that his nose was bleeding. Then he turned towards the guy and asked him in a rage why he dodged him. Young Sok, smiling stupidly, asked in response if Young had attacked him first. Young, wiping the blood with his hand, said that Young Sok has good reflexes, but how could he dodge it? Young Sok himself was also wondering about it. Looks like he really got stronger. Lunch came, and with it the time for lunch. Someone at school shouted that it was finally lunchtime, and another said that he was sleeping all the time anyway. Young called Young Sok for lunch and he told him to wait a minute, rummaged in his bag and took out 3 bottles. Pepper, salt and sugar. Young asked in bewilderment why he needed them, and Young Sok told him that he knew that their lunch was not very tasty. Young said that lunch seemed to be quite normal, and Young Sok, smiling, said that he also thought so. They went into the dining room and Young, happily surprised, shouted that today they were serving stew of spicy pork and kimchi. Isn't that cool? Young Sok looked at the food and thought that he usually liked this food, but now, here only the pork had a normal taste, at least it was edible. And then looking at his thoughts, he thought that his perception of taste had changed a lot. Sighing, he thought that this lunch should not be as delicious as before, and now he understood it. When they were looking for a place, her friend called him to sit here. It was that brown-haired girl with pronounced emotions. Young agreed instead of the guy and called in Young Sok. Young Sok looked at the smiling girl with green eyes, and then at the irritated golden-haired guy and sighed and sat down. Young, admiring the food, ate eating with both cheeks. The golden-haired man got up from his seat, and that girl with brown hair asked why he got up. And Sukal, that was the name of the golden-haired guy, said that he didn't want to eat. Young asked if he could give his portion to him, but Sukal said not to touch his food. Young Sok looked at the departing Sukal with bewilderment, and meanwhile, the green-eyed girl told him not to worry. Young Sok tasted the food and thought that, as expected, the food was not very good. Taking a little salt, he poured it on his hand and then began to crumble it, and then sprinkle it on the dish. Young asked him why he crushed the salt and Young Sok said that it would have melted by itself, but the food would have cooled down during this time. Then Jong Seok sprinkled a little pepper. One of the guys, or rather a skinny guy from their company, asked him why he was spoiling the food, because lunch is so delicious. Another guy, a fat man, eating a lynx, said that quantity over quality. Young asked a friend to give him a taste, and when he ate the pork, he screamed with pleasure, saying that it was excellent. Because of his harsh cry, the others almost spat out food from behind their mouths. Young, getting up from his seat, shouted at Young Sok that he had added all the salt and pepper, but the taste had changed so much. Young Sok, calmly eating his food, said that if the food is not delicious, then it's about seasonings. All he did was increase the salinity and sharpness. Young asked in surprise that this was all he needed to change the taste. Young Sok said that the difference between pouring out a glass of water and not pouring out. Young asked what it was and Young Sok smilingly said it was just 1 drop of water. Young still didn't understand, looked at his friend, and Young Sok said that all he did was add just 1 drop of flavor. And at this time, the green-eyed woman handed him a tray with her food, asking him to do the same for her. Near the school, Sukal met with Sunbi from the karate club. Som had a white uniform and a black belt characteristic of this club. Song had a short cropped head and looked at his hube with doubt because Sukal asked him for something that he usually didn't want to do. Su Chol, sitting on a bench, looked up and asked his Som if he understood what he was talking about. Som was still doubtful, so the golden-haired man said that everything would be fine even if he refused. He was not going to force him. But these words did not calm Som at all. At this time, a black-haired girl with glasses from their group called Sukal, running to him. The guy told his Som that he could go and began to listen to the girl. The black-haired girl told him that Young Sok was driving everyone crazy because he was seasoning food in the cafeteria and that made the food taste several degrees tastier. She also said that the first person he approached was Yoon Jai, that is, that green-eyed girl. Sukal, ignoring her words, asked what she came here for. The girl looked at him blankly and the guy continued, saying that she should have enjoyed lunch with all of them. The girl stuttered a little, said she would like to eat with him, and the guy got up from his seat and asked why she thought he would have lunch with her. The girl said she just wanted to be with him. And the guy frowned and said that this is what makes him lose his appetite. The next lesson was physical education, and the guys were indignant about it. All due to the fact that in this school during physical education guys learned judo, and girls also basketball. They were controlled during judo. There's Som, and the most creepy of them was Cho Hyun, a muscular guy with black hair pulled up. Now he was looking at Young Sok and remembering the words of his hube. Sukal asked him if he was going to an elite judo college. Then he told him that most likely he would not be able to get into such a college with the current skills. But Sukal could help him. His father was the college chairman Sunbi, and he was very respected. Of course, Cho Hyun couldn't remain indifferent after this, so he was going to do as Sukal said. He shouted at Young Sok Lee that he had the wrong stance. But the guy said that what was he talking about, because his stance was correct. Cho Hyun shouted at him to come out to him, and did not be impertinent. Young Sok, not understanding what was going on, came forward while the others were discussing this event. The whisper of course quickly reached the girls, and Yoon Jai also found out about it. Cho Hyun, looking at Young Sok, told him to get ready for sparring. Young, looking at this situation, thought that Young Sok would have a hard time, And Cho Hyun remembered his Hube's request, or rather that Cho Hyun should destroy Young Sok so that he could not walk with his head up in school. Clicking, Cho Hyun grabbed the form of Jong Seok and said that he was not going to tolerate such a trifle as Jong Seok in his gym, and after making a grab threw him to the ground. Yoon Jae looked at it with excitement. Soo Chol was grinning quite. But unfortunately, right before they collided with the ground, Young Seok twisted and hit his ankle on Sam's head, exposing his back. Not his head, for one thing. Cho Hyun was surprised by this in earnest. How in general did this guy manage to turn his body around and fall on his back? Was it a random happy accident? While Cho Hyun was guessing, Young Seok himself got up, sat down and turned to him and said that it was not fair. Of course, Young Seok was supported by his classmates, saying that he was right and it wasn't fair, but one shout from Cho Hyun was enough to silence them all. Young Seok stood up and asked to fight him again, which made Cho Hyun frown, but his classmates spread the atmosphere saying that they should fight again. Cho Hyun didn't understand where this guy's confidence came from. Yoon Jae, hearing the guy's words, asked him not to do it, and Soo Chol, seeing Yoon Jae's attitude, frowned harder. Of course, the other girls, seeing Yoon Jae's behavior, looked at her with incomprehension, asking her if she was worried about Young Seok. Ch Hyun took a stand and said that he would accept the challenge, let the guy go to him. Young Seok, looking at the whole situation, found it strange because he did not feel that he would lose. Cho Hyun shouted that he would come for him, moved towards him with a jerk and grabbed him by the collar and wanted to carry him to the ground, which made Yoon Jae even more worried, and Soo Chol, who was expecting this, smiled. But Young Seok did not lose vigilance and with difficulty, but was able to grab Song by the collar and picking it up, he threw it right on the floor. Cho Hyun bumped his head and never got up. Of course, this surprised everyone and everyone started talking in disbelief at what had just happened, asking each other about what he had done. And the girls all broke out saying that Young Seok is cool. Yoon Jae was surprised, but Soo Chol was surprised, but at the same time angry. Young Seok himself, sighing with difficulty, thought that he had used air manipulation on an instinctive level. But Cho Hyun was surprised at his loss, and therefore he asked for another round. Young Seok wanted to continue, because he was sure that he would win, but then they were stopped by Soo Chol. Cho Hyun looked at the golden-haired guy with a pale face, and he told him again to stop. Soo Chol saw his son trembling from shock and barely standing. Of course he did not want Young Seok to win again, thereby showing that it was not luck, but his skills. It would have made the guy the star of the school. After school, when Yoon Jae was walking home, she saw Soo Chol, who seemed to be waiting for her. Soo Chol told her that he would like to talk to her and Yoon Jae asked what he wanted to talk about. Soo Chol asked how she felt about him and Yoon Jae. Not understanding what was going on, said that of course they were just friends. Soo Chol said he wanted more and the girl got into a stupor. The girl took a step back and told Soo Chol to stop joking like that. But the guy insisted that he was not joking and took a step forward and said that he did not want to interfere and wanted to see what would happen, but he did not like that Yoon Jae began to get closer to Young Seok. Yoon Jae said that both Soo Chol and Young Seok, her friends and both her classmates. So why does Soo Chol think so? Soo Chol looking down said that because he chose her and because she is his woman, and she can't communicate with others. He said the last part with pressure approaching the girl's face, which of course scared Yoon Jae and she moved back and asked the golden-haired guy to stop being like that, because she might get angry. Soo Chol chuckled at her words and this infuriated the girl, and she screamed at him, asking why she couldn't get mad at him. He thinks that since he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and considers himself a handsome, intelligent and serious schoolboy, then she will not be able to tell him anything. It's the other girls going crazy over him. Soo Chol asked her, what about her? She doesn't like him. And Yoon Jae said that she didn't like him. The girl with a serious face said that she didn't like his excessive possessiveness. He didn't even have a drop of attentiveness, which is why he made many girls cry. She has no desire to become his property. Having said that, she turned and began to walk, saying, finally, that she would not become one of them. Soo Chol chuckled to himself and thought that why would she leave, because he would never let the woman he chose leave him. Young Seok's mom was standing in the diner, and she saw Yoon Jae and called her over, saying what she was doing there. Judging by her uniform, she was from the same school as Young Seok. Bowing 90 degrees. The girl greeted the woman and said that she was a classmate of Young Seok, and in the end addressed her as a mother. Chuckling, Young Seok's mother asked why she called her mother and Yoon Jae blushed deeply. Seeing this, the woman laughed and said that although it doesn't sound bad. The woman's husband, grinning, approached his wife and said that their son didn't look like him. The woman screamed at her husband and told him to go peel potatoes. Yoon Jae also asked if Young Seok was at home, and the woman said that most likely Young Seok was in the library right now. The girl nodded regretfully, and the woman told her to go inside. Everything is exactly right. Young Seok should be coming soon, so she can wait for him eating rice cakes. At that time, Young Seok was actually in the library reading books, looking at the old books. He was surprised that there were such books here. The book he chose was The Diary of the Wang Family, Mottos and Sayings of the Wang Family. It was written there that the diary of the Wang family was written thanks to the sayings and mottos of the Wang family. And the book said that if someone is in a higher position, then he should look after those who are below him, and those who are in a low position should focus only on the goal. The post did not create a person, but a person created a place. Those who changed because of the change of rank, such people are called small-hearted people. On the other hand, those who do their work honestly, no matter how hard or easy it is, are called noble people. Goals can be achieved not only in one way, but at least 10. And so he was reading this book, and suddenly a librarian passing by asked him if he understood what was written there. The guy, not understanding, tilted his head and said yes questioningly. The old man said that he meant that the book in the young man's hand was written in Chinese. Surprised by this discovery, he involuntarily shouted that it was because of the book of experience. And the old man, not understanding, asked what he was talking about, and he said that nothing. And then he looked at the book again. He could easily read this diary of the Wang family. He understood not only the symbols, but also the meaning of what he read. It looks like this is a learning experience from Meng. For him, reading Chinese characters should be easier than ever. Thanks to his experience in Chinese, and can read Chinese characters fluently. If he can read and write Chinese, doesn't that mean he can also speak it? He tried to think in Chinese about the words he could say in English, but a minute has passed and he still can't come up with anything concrete. It looks like he needs some kind of trigger to make it work. When he went into the diner, he saw Yunjai, who was washing tables in an apron. Surprised, he tilted his head and then looked at his parents. His mother immediately told him not to misunderstand. It was Yunjai herself who insisted that she wanted to help, and his father, smiling, said that they did not use her or something like that. Young Sok looked at his girlfriend and asked what she was doing here, if she wanted rice cakes. Yunjai, embarrassed, said she'd better go and thank the guy's parents for letting her stay here. Those smiling told her to be careful on the way home, and that she was careful. When the girl came out of the door, Young Sok, without understanding, asked why she was here, and his father told him that the guy was an idiot. He seriously thought that she had come here to eat spicy rice. Smitten. The guy, still not understanding, looked at his father, and he, irritated by the stupidity of his son, shouted that it was because of him that she came. The guy, still not catching up, asked why. Her father said it was because she liked Young Sok. His son should be more attentive to the feelings of women. Then the father added, approaching the guy, that personality should be more important than appearance, and Young Sok should always remember this. Having lowered a stingy man's tear, the guy's father said that he fell in love with his mother's face, and that's what it led to. Because of his words, the father immediately got a frying pan in his face, and the guy's mother shouted at him so that if he wants to teach him, then let him teach him correctly. Hyunjai, walking home at sunset, was still embarrassed, thinking that in the end she didn't say anything, but even so, she felt happy. At night, in his room, Young Sok thought about the improvements that had happened to him. He had already seen the effect of physical improvement, but he could not understand what scientific analysis gives. Sitting at the table, he looked at the book of experience and remembered today, especially the time of the lesson, and analyzing with the previous days, he still came to the conclusion that nothing had changed. At least he didn't see any difference. It seems that complex topics also did not become easier for him. If physical improvements affected his body, then scientific analysis must have had some effect on his learning abilities. It seems to be the same as physical improvement. Super Taste and Knife Master is one of the types of experience he received, but if compared with games, then maybe it's similar with passive skills. The results from the Super Taste and the Master of the Knife were obvious, because on the same day his taste buds sharpened, and the use of the knife reached a completely new level. But as for scientific analysis, he could not understand what it was intended for. Fumbling in his backpack, he took out one of the notebooks and wondered how to activate this effect from scientific analysis. Opening the notebook, he told himself that maybe if he heard something, he would be able to learn it the first time. But suddenly something dawned in his head when he looked at a mathematical problem that had more letters than numbers. He immediately began to solve it, and after a couple of minutes he succeeded. Looking at the answers to the task with surprise, he did not believe that he could really solve it. At first glance, it was clear that this was a difficult task, but somehow he was able to solve it. Maybe this is just the action of his skill. Exactly. Scientific analysis allows him to analyze and understand what he taught and not forget it. Inspired by his discovery, he began to write down one of the tasks that he had recently solved, but after scratching his head, he sighed. He couldn't solve this problem. Why is that? Maybe it's because he didn't pass the topic. It turns out it won't work with topics he hasn't studied before. After opening the book, he began to read, but quickly realized that reading does not mean that he will fully understand the topic he has read. Therefore, Young Seok decided to focus on repeating those from the very beginning. All the rules and examples that the teacher gives from the book. If he studies it, doesn't it mean that he can become the best student in school? Some time passed, and then, tired, Young Seok stretched. He was interested to see the reaction of his parents when he becomes the best student of the school. He was surprised that he studied so hard and diligently. Who would have known that studying can be interesting, especially when you understand everything the first time? He gratefully looked at the book of experiments and decided to write something. Opening it, He wrote down about the experience gained during lunch, about the experience of seasoning food for girls, also the experience gained during a judo lesson, and finally the case when Yoon-jae came to their restaurant. The book gave him 25 points for the usual judo experience, as well as another 25 points for the dating experience. Looking at the last line, he was confused, because it wasn't a date at all. Suddenly he remembered about the diary of the Wang family and decided to search for it on the internet via a smartphone. But there was no information about this book. This surprised the guy, because he thought it was a famous book. But it looks like he was wrong. Then he wondered what would happen if he wrote about the fact that he took the Wang family diary from the library and now he can read Chinese characters. The experience book gave him 2,500 experience points, saying that he wrote about the experience of finding the diary of the noble Wang family. Surprised by the figure, he could not believe that the record about finding some kind of diary is comparable to the experience of saving a person. But how did he get 2,500 points just for finding the diary of the noble Wang family? Taking this book out of his backpack, he looked at its cover. Diary of the noble Wang family. Maybe it's because he thought that everything that was written there were good and right things. Although, why does he think so? At first, Young-seok didn't know about Chinese characters, so what right did he have to judge what was written there? Shaking his head, he decided not to bother his head with it and went to bed. The very next morning he went to school. When he passed the girls in the hallway, they couldn't take their eyes off Young-seok. The girls wondered how this guy became so attractive in one day. He looked completely different than before. Some even asked their friends if it was worth flirting with Young-seok, but their friends grinned at them, saying that how could they do that after recently calling this guy a loser. Without listening to all this, the guy went into the classroom as there was a bang and confetti flew over his head. Young greeted him with smiles from ear to ear and Young-seok asked what was going on here and his friend, smiling, told him not to talk like Young-seok didn't notice how the girls were staring at him when he came into class. After defeating the leader of the judo club, Cho Hyun, Jong-seok's rating rose to heroic. Young-seok wanted to justify himself by saying that it was an accident. But Young did not let him rush to hug him and shouting that he was glad that Young-seok was his bro. At this time, a voice came from behind them, telling them to stop talking, and the angry Young turned around and shouted about who said it. He saw Suchul studying, and he indifferently told him that he was studying, and they were interfering with him. Young wanted to justify himself, but the golden-haired man just once again told him to shut up. Young cursed inwardly, and Young-seok looked at Sukal. The next couple was Izo. And as always, the students were not happy about this, saying that Izo should be taught to elementary classes, not them. Someone asked the whining guy if he wasn't just glad that they weren't studying anymore. That guy said he just didn't want to get his hands dirty, because then he would have to wash them. The teacher, with short hair styled to the right and glasses, asked everyone to calm down and asked if everyone had brought their things. Everyone said yes and the teacher asked them to draw any plant. Young-seok thought about how to draw him. And after a while, when the teacher was passing by the students checking how they were coping, he saw that the guy had drawn something, and also signed it with Chinese characters. The surprised teacher watched Young-seok draw something in a relaxed manner. Enlightenment of bamboo and its stem. It was said that the refinement of bamboo is the initiated disciple, and the bamboo stalk is the disciple's mind. The teacher, seeing this beauty, was sure that the drawing of the tree was also magnificent, but the most amazing thing was that he did not use a candle for writing. Unable to resist, he said that it was an outstanding calligraphy and asked Young-seok where he learned it. The guy, raising his head and looking at the teacher, said that he learned from the book. The teacher, surprised by this, looked at the brush lying next to the calligraphy canvas and asked Young-seok if he had painted only with this, and he answered in the affirmative. This surprised the teacher even more, because Young-seok was able to write such a thing only with an ordinary brush. He could not miss such a talent, so he asked him to come to the Izo class after lunch. Not understanding why he did this, the guy asked again what he needed in the class of Izo, and the teacher confirmed it, saying that he should definitely come. At recess, while Young and Young-seok were walking to the dining room, Young asked a friend why he was called to the Izo office. Maybe he drew something depraved. Young-seok said that this was not the case, and Young looked at the drawing and asked what it was, himself suggesting that it looked like a thermos. Young-seok wanted to answer, but as soon as they entered the dining room, girls ran towards the guy with trays in their hands, asking him to season their food. They almost crushed the guys, which is why Young blocked their way and asked them to line up in one line. Young-seok regretfully said that he's not a cook. How can he spice up their food every time? The surprised girls told him that he was just running away and the guy just apologized and walked past them and approached Yoon-jae beckoning her. Yoon-jae turned to him a little embarrassed, and the guy took out a thermos and opened it, told her to try it. There were spicy rice cakes inside the thermos and the girl was surprised by them. And the guy said that the taste would change if they cooled down, so he brought them in a thermos. The girl said that he was not obliged and the guy said that yesterday she only helped, he was not well so he cooked it. Seeing this, the other girls screamed, saying that Yoon-jae was at Young-seok's house and they thought she was quiet. Young, seeing this as an opportunity, said that he could spice up their food with them, and the girls looked at him and thought about replacing him, but when they saw him, they immediately shouted at him to shut up. Young Sok asked Yoonjae to try a piece and the girl, still confused, tried it and her eyes sparkled. At another table sat 3 who were always in the same company with Suchol. That is, a black-haired, bespectacled girl, a chubby guy and a skinny guy with his hair up. The girl with glasses screamed that she knew that this bastard would make his move sooner or later. The skinny guy said that there was nothing unusual about it and they seemed to look good together. And the other said only that he wanted to try his spicy rice cakes. The bespectacled woman screamed at him, telling him to just keep eating his food. The skinny guy looked around, curiously asked if they knew where Suchol had gone. And the bespectacled one turned around and said that Suchol didn't want to see all this, so he didn't come. The chubby one asked curiously if Suchol had given up on Yoonjae. And the skinny guy, smiling, said that this could not be. They all knew Suchol. He couldn't stand it when someone took something that belonged to him. At that time, the director and the calligraphy teacher were sitting in the principal's office. The teacher, putting the canvas on the table, told the director to look at it. The director, curiously opening the canvas, asked what it was and finding there the calligraphy of Young Sok, said in surprise that it was a masterpiece and that it was an outstanding calligraphy. The teacher asked if such an expert as the director sees this as an outstanding calligraphy. The director said that how can he call himself a professional if he only took a couple of calligraphy lessons from his grandfather. After looking more closely, the director said that it didn't look like printer ink and that it looked like it had been written recently. The principal asked if the teacher himself had written it about. The teacher regretfully said that it was not him, but his student from the ISO class. The surprised director asked the teacher if he was sure that it was a student and he replied that it was, and also that the student had drawn it with a simple brush. The director folded the calligraphy sheet and said that there was no reason not to meet a student with such outstanding calligraphy. Jong Sok himself was sitting in the IZO classroom right now and waiting for the teacher. The lesson was going to start soon, so he was impatient. And then the director and the calligraphy teacher came in. The guy hurriedly got up from his seat and made a bow greeting the director and the teacher. The director asked the guy with a smile that he was Lee Jong Sok and he replied that it was so. The director said that he had heard that the guy was a great calligrapher. The teacher, smiling at this time, added that the director saw the guy's work and highly appreciated him. Surprised, Young Sok asked in perplexity with what kind of work and the teacher showed his calligraphy today. After that, the director asked him if he could show how he writes. The director asked the teacher if he had a pen and ink, and he said that he did and began to preparing, pouring it into a vessel for ink and wanted to grind it. But the director stopped him saying that for calligraphy, the one who writes should rub ink. Then the director turned to the guy and asked him if it was time for him to start. The guy took a black stone for rubbing the ink and began to rub it. With surprise and new sensations, he looked at the stone, thinking that the ink felt somehow new. They had art lessons before, so he knew how to rub ink, but it was the first time he felt that it was so natural. Maybe it's also because of the study experience. He felt his mind become calm and even as he rubbed the coarse ink into a soft goo. This did not escape the keen eye of the director and he was surprised by such a level of concentration of the guy. The director remembered that as a child his grandfather had told him that writing calligraphy meant putting his feelings and emotions into it. It all starts with rubbing the ink. He must make sure that while rubbing the ink, he also invests his emotions. The director learned calligraphy from his grandfather, who took first place during the Joseon Dynasty state exams. Therefore, the director was proud that he had a deep knowledge of the art of calligraphy, but in order for him to become a master, he needed a master. At this time, Young Seok finished rubbing and asked what to write to him and the director told him to write a phrase that the guy likes. The guy wondered if he should write a phrase from the diary of the Wang family. Since he remembered one of the phrases that was there, he decided to write it. The director calculated what was written. Understanding by ear, you can earn the trust of another by listening to him. Then he took the guy's sheet and began his analysis. The handwriting itself is bold and rich. At the same time there were notes of elegance in it, plus free strokes, saying that it was fine. The director even compared this work with the work of Wang Moonjang. Hearing Wang Moonjang's name, the guy tilted his head, but before he could think, the director asked him who he studied with and the guy said that he studied by reading books. This greatly surprised the director and he asked again if the guy had never taken lessons from a teacher or other adults. And the guy nodded. The director looked at the sheet with satisfaction and said that it is very difficult to learn such a level of calligraphy only by yourself. It is very commendable. Then he handed over the money, saying that it was a payment for calligraphy. Surprised and a little scared, the guy said that no, he didn't need it. But the director began to insist, saying that this money was not from the teacher, but from someone who appreciates calligraphy and wants to thank his creator for such a masterpiece. Bowing, the guy accepted the money and thanked the director. The director smilingly said that it would be great if they continued to write calligraphy in the future. The bell rang and therefore the director told him that he could go. Because it looks like the lesson will start soon, the guy bowed 90 degrees and said yes and left. Reading the phrase, the director said that it was a great phrase. The teacher asked what it meant and the principal said that it meant that one could earn the trust of another by listening carefully to him. When a person does not impose his judgments on another, He can listen and understand topics, ideas that a person likes, and on the basis of this continue the conversation or something else. After giving his smartphone to Teacher O, the director asked him to take a picture of it together with the calligraphy, while he should focus the camera on the calligraphy, not on him. The teacher took a picture and apologized, left, saying that he also had a lesson. The director wrote in his chat to his friends that he wanted to share this beautiful work that he had recently received and sent a message along with a photo of calligraphy. And he looked again at the phrase written in it, thinking that the more he looks at it, the more it fascinates him. No sooner had he put the smartphone back in his pocket than it began to vibrate, and when he entered the chat, he saw how others were writing to him. One wrote that calligraphy has an amazing handwriting, and the second that this phrase is magnificent and very deep. The third asked the director where he got it from and also asked why there was no signature, because by this signature you can find out who wrote calligraphy. The fourth wrote that he would like to admire this calligraphy in person, so he asked everyone to get together. The director smiled, thinking that it looks like his friends are more interested than him. At this time, Young-seok, who was returning to class, was thinking about the name Wang Mujang, which he heard from the principal. Maybe Wang Moonkyang is the person who wrote the diary of the Wang family, or maybe the author of the diary copied Wang Moonjang's handwriting. And is Wang Moonjang known to be as famous as Han Soon-bong? While asking these questions in his mind, Young-seok began to scour the internet for information. Wikipedia said that he was a politician of the Cheng dynasty and a great calligrapher, and his strokes and handwriting are concise and elegant. There wasn't much information, and Young-seok thought it was because he was Chinese. Young-seok decided to write a new query in the search engine and therefore wrote about the cost of Wang Moonkyang's works. Nothing was found on his request. Tilting his head, the guy decided to find out about the cost of Han Sung-bong's work and this time was shocked by the amount he saw. The cost of the book with the works of Han Sung-bong in total was $7 million. The next day, his parents saw him off, wishing him good luck and good grades for exams. The guy, smiling, thanked them and left. Surprisingly, this is the first time when he was waiting for the exams to begin. What kind of assessment does he get? And so in the classroom, everyone was focused on the tests. After receiving his piece of paper, Young-seok went through the tasks once and smiled because he had confidence that he could cope with everything. Mentally asking his mother to wait a little, because he would make her a nice gift, he began to do the test. The exam was over and everyone was very happy about it, shouting about it in the corridors. But some whined that tomorrow they would have to take exams again. And someone more optimistic said that there would be no lessons. Young-seok walked past these people with his hands in his pockets, and at that moment Yoon-jae appeared beside him and called him, asked how he wrote the exams. The guy, smiling, said that he thinks it turned out well. A cheerful voice rang out from behind, saying that probably Young-seok was looking through the test paper until his eyes burst, and another voice laughingly added that it was a pity, because the answers he had been staring at for so long were probably wrong. Turning around, Young-seok and Yoon-jae saw Sukal and his sixers in the form of a fat man and a skinny guy. The skinny guy, smiling all over his mouth, said that after all, the one who gets the best grade has already been determined. After all, it will be Mr. Best Student Kim Sukal. Sukal just looked at him indifferently and the skinny guy continued, saying that Yoon-jae would be the second, but Young-seok, as always, would be somewhere in the middle of the list with average scores. The fat man standing on the other side of Sukal laughed and said that this is an immutable law. Sukal called Yoon-jae with a smile, but she turned around and took Young-seok by the hand and told him to go. The same one looked back in surprise, and then went forward. Of course, this scene made Sukal very angry. After leaving school, they were walking along the road when Yoon-jae asked the guy if they could go to the library together. They could study together for tomorrow's exams. The guy regretfully asked for forgiveness, saying that he would be preparing at home, and then the girl sadly tossed her head, but then embarrassed asked the guy if they could take a walk after the exams. Young-seok of course agreed and the girl, delighted, turned to him and told him to swear. The violent reaction of her friend surprised the guy, but Yoon-jae, without even suspecting it, said goodbye to him, saying that they would see each other tomorrow and left. In the staff room, which was typical, just like in any other Korean school. That is, the office was divided into places blocked by walls indicating the place of each teacher. Each place had 2 workstations equipped with tables and chairs, as well as a laptop. In one of these places, a teacher with glasses and a light beard was sitting at one of the desks and making some notes on one sheet. While he was studying, another teacher came up to him with a smile on his face and called him, saying Teacher Choi. The teacher turned around and said that he was listening to the math teacher, and he smiled and said that one of his students had received the highest grade in mathematics. The teacher smilingly said that it was probably Kim Sukal, because he is the best student in the class and always gets the highest grade. So this is not surprising. But another teacher said it wasn't him, and Teacher Choi, surprised, turned to the math teacher and asked, "Then who is it?" The math teacher smilingly said that this time it wasn't Su Chol who got the highest grade, but the next day in one of the school classrooms, where there were 3 writing boards, one large in the center and 2 others on either side of it, as well as a TV suspended from the ceiling on the left. There were students in the classroom and their homeroom teacher appeared there, saying that today he would be the examiner. Young, surprised by this, asked that shouldn't subject teachers be the examiners at the exams, so why is it cool today? Teacher Choi sighed and told them to just accept it. Then he said about the rules. Cheating is prohibited. If students are caught, their work will not be counted. Young Sok looked at the exam sheet, thinking that English should be first today. After looking at the questions, he was sure that he could solve them, and therefore immediately bent down and began to do them. The teacher, passing between the desks, slowed down next to Young Sok and checked his test sheet. Third, first, fifth. Teacher Choi asked for answers from the English teacher in advance and learned them before coming here. So far all of Young Sok's answers were correct, but it shocked Teacher Choi. And now the exams are over again and the student rating has been hung up. And in this ranking, the first place was taken by Lee Jong-sok with 100 points in all subjects. The runner-up was Kim Soo-kal with 2 100 seconds, 2 98 seconds and 199 and a total score of 99. Kim Hana was third with a total score of 97.5 and Nam Sang-dul was fourth with a total score of 92. Of course, this surprised everyone. Of course, it was surprising that Young Sok became the first, but everyone was more surprised that Soo-kal became the second. Soo-chul himself looked at it with barely restrained anger, but his henchman looked at it with shock. Young hugged his friend saying that he knew that Young Sok could, because Young had spent so much effort on his training. Immediately, voices were heard saying that Young Woo was a jerk. How could he teach Young Sok if he took 5th place from the end of the list? Young Sok also congratulated Yoon Jae. Smiling, she said that it looks like Young Sok studied hard. Young Sok was smiling at her as someone pushed the girl away and appeared in front of Young Sok. It was Kim So-woo, the school's main bully. His head was shaved off like an army, and his look was villainous. Seo-woo himself was a little fit and pumped up, but now he was looking at Young Sok with an angry face, saying that he cheated. Kim So-woo, looking at the guy angrily, told him that Young Sok thinks he can be the best student of the school, or what? Approaching and poking him with his finger, Seo-woo told him that he had cheated. He ordered Young Sok to tell him how he had done so that Seo-woo could also pull this off. Shaking off Woo's hand, Young Sok, with a frowning face, said that there was no secret or method here, and then told him to take his hand away. This angered the bully even more, and with a distorted face, he grinned and asked what Jong Sok had just hit him. And then he shouted that this kid seems to be does he think that once in the first place, then everything is allowed to him? Immediately there was a hubbub of people. One said that it looked like a fight was about to start, and the other asked if no one could stop them. Chubby said that don't they know Seo-woo's character? If someone interferes he will get two. Someone else said that if this continues, maybe Young Sok won't be able to walk home on his own. Yoon Jae looked at Young Sok with concern, and at that time Seo-woo grabbed him by the shirt and shouted that he was asking in a good way, while preparing a blow. At this time, Yoon Jae screamed loudly, but Seo-woo, sending his fist, was surprised to notice that Young Sok dodged. Young Sok slipped behind Seo-woo and hit him on the spine. Crouching with Woo did not believe in it, as well as others. Soo-kal was especially surprised. Seo-woo, holding his side, could barely stand, but Young Sok, standing straight up, said that he had not cheated. Seo-woo called him a little bastard in a rage and went at him with his fist at the ready. Young Sok easily dodged and using inertia hit Seo-woo's leg, which caused him to collapse to the ground and hit his head and lost consciousness. After such a show, of course, the hubbub of people began. One said in disbelief that Young Sok really defeated this tyrant Kim So-woo, and the other said that it turns out that he defeated the judo captain was not an accident. Yoon Jae, not believing it, grabbed her mouth with her palm. Jong Sok approached the already awakened So-woo and told him that he had never cheated. Seo-woo, on the other hand, was looking at this guy, trembling all over and with fear in his eyes. Young Sok decided to leave and Young told them to wait for him and also left with him. Soo-kal, looking at this scene in shock, thought about what was going on with this jerk. Looking at the sky, Young Sok thought about whether he should have answered a couple of questions wrong. He looked at his friend and asked him, does he also think that Young Sok cheated? Young said that he didn't say anything, and it's not that important. Now there is something more important than that. Young Sok, not understanding, tilted his head and Young grabbed him by the neck and shouted that he could help a friend cheat like that, but instead passed everything perfectly and left his friend behind. When he came home, Young Sok saw that the restaurant was already closed and, not believing it, went up to the house. When he came in, he said that he was at home and immediately his mother attacked him, shouting that he was her wonderful son. Hugging him, she said that she found out that he got the first place in the rating of the whole school and started kissing him on the cheeks. The surprised guy asked how they knew and the woman said that his homeroom teacher called them. He said that Young Sok got the first place and asked his mother and father to cook some delicious food for his son. Surprised by this, the guy asked that it was definitely his homeroom teacher and the father smilingly said yes, and it looks like the teacher was very proud of Young Sok. Young Sok asked looking at his parents that they didn't doubt him. The father asked why they should, and the guy said maybe he was cheating or something. The father, smiling, said to his son that he also went to school and he is sure that it is impossible to take the first place by cheating alone. Besides, the guy's father, smiling, said that he trusted him. Young Seok smiled back and said it was a simple and clear answer. Mom screamed that in honor of this, they would go today and eat whatever was delicious, and father said that let it be pork ribs. It was the first time in a long time that they got out somewhere to eat. The guy's expectations were high, but the food, to put it mildly, was not delicious. Because of the super taste, the pork ribs he loved were tasteless. However, Young Seok couldn't complain since his parents liked the dinner. It was a simple eatery with a meat roasting stove in the center of the table. Besides, the atmosphere of the place was pleasant. Also, Young Seok learned something new today. A person could eat food only for the sake of his taste, but who you eat it with is much more important than taste. Soon after the exams, the holidays began, and this moment was awkward for the guy, because now it will be his first date. To do this, he got up early in the morning, went to the shower and began to wash at the same time, thinking what he should do. He also noticed that he was washing for too long, washing his hair for the third time. Then he remembered Yoon Jae's face, and decided that even though it was strange, it wouldn't hurt him. Then he went on a date. First there was an amusement park where they had a good time. After that they went to lunch, where they had a good chat, and then went to the cinema, where they were embarrassed eating popcorn and cola, and then evening came and they visited a simple eatery. After tasting the lemon juice, the girl said that she seemed to be missing something. By the way, she was wearing an orange, cute striped jumper and a black skirt today. The guy himself was wearing a green jacket and also black trousers. Young Seok stretched out his hand and said, Yoon Jae, give him the juice, he will try to improve the taste a little. The girl smiled and said that she did not mean juice. Surprised, Young Seok asked then what she meant. The girl smilingly said that they did not hold hands today and it upset her a little. The guy was very embarrassed because of this and even blushed. And so they were walking under the pink cherry petals, and the girl made an attempt to touch the palm of the guy and he did not push away and took it in response. Turning to the girl, their eyes met and they both blushed. At that moment, it seemed to Young Seok that the grasshoppers were chirping louder than usual. In a green area where grass grew and trees were more beautiful, the girl stood on her toes and reached out to the guy. The guy hugged her from behind and their lips met. Young Seok started to open his eyes and was shocked to see that he was kissing a pillow. Standing up in shock, he shouted why he had such dreams, because they only held hands. He looked at his smartphone, which seemed to have received a message. At the school at the principal's office, Young Seok knocked on the brown door and was told to come in from inside. Entering, he bowed and greeted. By the way, right now Young Seok was wearing a blue t-shirt and black jeans. Young Seok said that even though it's the holidays, but the principal is still coming to school. The director, who was sitting in his chair in a shirt, told him to sit down, and then pointed to the wall where the calligraphy was, saying that these were his works and he wanted Young Seok to appreciate him. Young Seok looked at them and said he thought they were great. The director asked the guy if he was busy now, and the guy asked curiously, what, did something happen? The director said that there would be a meeting of the MUNBA-NWU Literary Circle later and he would be happy if Young Seok would join them. Looking at the smiling director, Young Seok asked without understanding that he was sure. The director told the guy not to be scared. All the participants there want to meet with him. Then the guy agreed, smiling awkwardly. Then Young Seok looked up and asked if director Wang Moon-jae knew. The director got up and going to the shelves, asked that the guy was interested in them because he said that their handwriting is similar. Going to the shelf with books, the director took one of them and said that Wang Moon-jae was a famous scholar in Chang. He had short phrases, but at the same time they are elegant and beautiful. Handing the book to the guy, he added that this book contains several of his works. Taking the book, the guy noticed that it was a very old book and told the director about it. The director said that there are books that have recently been released, but when you read his works like this, they seem more significant. The guy looked at the title and the old man said that this was undoubtedly How to Iron Out Wang Moon-jae's Handwriting. Then he added that the guy took it and read it. Young Seok thanked him for that. The two of them went out into the corridor and Young Seok asked if Wang Moon-jae was also known as Han Segbok. The director said that yes, of course, it was. Wang Moon-jae was one of the best among all the calligraphers in Chang. Then the guy asked how much his work might cost. The director looked at the guy and said that it was not good to evaluate the importance of work with money, but he thought that several million won. Then the guy asked if the book was written by Moon-jae himself. Then the director smiled and said that if it was something that Wang Moon-jae himself had written, then it would be worth about 1 billion won. It shocked the guy, but the director said that since he is not so famous here, it would cost so much, but in China, it would cost more. And so Young Seok and the director were driving in his blue Audi. They stopped near a house that was made in the style of the Joseon times of Korea. The guy, seeing this splendor, asked if it was the director's house, but then grinned and said that with his current salary, this is impossible. This is a restaurant that they have chosen as a meeting place. When they went inside, they saw an alley with greenery, and Young Seok, surprised, asked what this restaurant was. They were led in the right direction and so they went into the right room and the director said that it looks like he came last. Inside, 2 men were sitting next to the dining table on one side and 2 more on the other. One man was bald and wearing a white kimono, the other in an office suit with black hair. The third person sitting parallel to them was with a half-bald head and a blue kimono, and another middle-aged man in a yellow kimono and with longer blonde hair. The director smiled and said that this guy is the one he was talking about, Mr. Lee Jong-sok. When he heard Mr. Jong-sok thought to himself that he had aged a lot. Everyone got up from their seats and bowed to him, saying that they were pleased to meet him and thanked him for coming. Lee Jong-sok, surprised by this, immediately bowed 90 degrees greeting them. The director, smiling, told them not to strain so much. The one in the blue kimono smiled and said that how could they talk informally with such a wonderful calligrapher. The director turned to the guy with a smile, saying that he hadn't thought, and then added that he hoped that Master Lee Jong-sok would forgive him for being rude. The guy looking at this mess thought that if they continue like this, it will put pressure on him. Then the director pointed to the cookies, told him to eat it and wait a bit. The guy sat down and looked at the cookies in the center of the table and thought that they looked appetizing. Taking one, he decided that he needed to see what it tasted like, and to his surprise, it was very tasty. It was the first time the food seemed delicious to him after he got his super taste. The cookies were not too sweet and a little spicy, and the tea had a delicate taste, like the sweet aroma of flowers. The director suddenly hung up the calligraphy he had given him and almost spat out the tea. Why was she here? An old man in a blue kimono asked him if everything was fine with him, and Jong-sok said yes, everything was fine with him. At this time, a beautiful maid in the form of Joseon maids came inside. The color of the uniform was pink, and the skirts were burgundy. Jong-sok said that everything is fine. He can finish this tea. But the maid took the cup and said she would bring another glass of tea. Seeing her, the guy opened his mouth in embarrassment, thinking about how cute this girl was. Looking confusedly at the girl, the guy thought that she was cuter than many stars, and when she looked at him slightly opening her eyes, he immediately turned away blushing. At this time, the old men were discussing Jong-sok's calligraphy, saying that it looks much better than in the photo. One of them asked if he was referring to Wang Moonjing's calligraphy, and the director said that obviously the guy studied well. This surprised others. The guy himself sat awkwardly and looked at the calligraphy from here. The maid wished him a pleasant appetite and got up and left. The director asked the guy to write something and he agreed, because he already thought that coming here he would have to write. He asked what the director should write to him, and the director asked his colleagues if they had any suggestions. The one in the suit said that let it be loyalty and patriotism. The director, seeing this, smiled and said that the spirit of the salad had returned. Jong-sok started drawing. To repay your country with loyalty. It was said that General Yu Fei's mother, who was a commander and scholar in the Southern Song dynasty, wrote this on his back. Loyalty is as sharp as a sword, patriotism is as serene as a lake. Loyalty is the soul of a warrior, and patriotism is the heart of a scientist. Looking at this, the old people could not help but be surprised, saying that this is a beautiful calligraphy. The director said that she was suitable for such a soldier as a man in a suit. He asked Jong-sok if he had a signature, and Jong-sok said he didn't have one. Then, he pointed to the coal and told him to write his name there in Chinese. The director also said that it is the law to sign your work, and the guy wrote his name. The man in the suit happily took the paper and hung it next to the director's calligraphy, saying that he would feed them lunch. An old man in white asked if their lunch had not already been paid for. The director asked his colleagues if Mr. Lie's calligraphy was not beautiful, and everyone said they were pretty, no more. They were fascinated by his work. The one in the blue kimono handed the guy a business card saying that if Jong-sok is ill or he needs an examination, he can come to the hospital where this old man works. The business card said that this old man was the president of Seoul Hospital, Kim Jo-kal. The man in the suit also handed him a business card, and it was written there that this middle-aged man, advisor to the National Defense Institute, advisor to Call Ya. The guy, turning the business card, thought about what these places were for, when he suddenly saw that it said Lieutenant General of the Second Class. Of course it surprised him. Then he took the business card of the old man in white and the man in yellow. One was a former minister of the Ministry of Culture and Sports. Awkwardly looking at the director, he thought that this man had pretty good connections. The director, smiling, told everyone that it was time to eat. They were already waiting. The maids all set the table with dishes. Looking at all these wonderful dishes, Jong-sok also realized one more thing. Taste is important, but you can't forget about the shape and aroma. The maid told him to eat and not be shy. There was a little bit of everything in the plates. It looked delicious, but there was very little. The maid smiled as if she guessed his thoughts and therefore said that they would bring food until he was full, so he could not worry and eat as much as he wanted. The guy nodded and asked, and lifted a piece of meat to his mouth. It was very tasty. Then he tried the beef and radish soup, which was very spicy and fragrant. And in the end, of course, the perilla leaves went, but they were not very pleased with the taste. Taking a napkin, he spat them out. The leaves had an unpleasant smell and taste. The maid apologized, took one of the plates with a leaf and went out to the kitchen. Yongsong's Pure Silver was a restaurant with a membership system, so there are not many customers here, and if a problem appears, it is immediately solved. The maid, going to the kitchen, found the cook there and said that the client from the chrysanthemum room spat out the leaves of the perilla while eating. The boss was surprised and therefore asked again if it was true, and the maid nodded. He tasted the leaves and asked if the customer liked the rest, and the maid said that the customer liked the rest, well, except for the perilla leaves. The next one we see is the man Rayleigh. He is a carpenter from Adola. Rayleigh replied that he didn't know anything about where they were. The third guy's name is Grisha. He has a stall in Halcyon. He differed from the first two characters in that he was more shy. He didn't know how he got here either. The next character we meet is a young girl, Jenna. She lived in the woods. She, like the others, did not understand how they got here. And the last character we meet is a young guy, Islat Khan. He is a farmer. Unfortunately, he could not give any information about their location either. The guys started discussing among themselves what was going on here and where they were. Darkness reigned around because of the ruins. Someone suggested that it was just a dream, since the harvest season has now begun. One of them suggested that they might have been teleported for experiments. Point, to which the man with the scar angrily replied, "Don't talk nonsense." Raleigh, after getting acquainted, concluded that they were all residents of Tawny. He suggested that the others further compare the facts in order to understand something. When suddenly, out of nowhere, a little girl with wings appeared. She enthusiastically asked what they were doing. She was wearing a black dress that complemented her magical image. She went on to say that the master had opened the rift of space and time. She warned them to prepare for battle. As it turned out, this is a little fairy who is much smaller than the characters themselves, the consequence of which they stared at her in bewilderment. One of them, being in shock, asked who she was, to which she replied that they could call her Izzle. She is the guardian fairy of this place. Despite her small stature, she was a threat, so she warned them that it was better for them not to argue with her if they didn't want to get hurt. The scarred man, trying to find out where they were, asked her who brought them here, but Isel didn't give a clear answer. She said it was none of their business. The man was accumulating anger. He did not understand how it was possible to kidnap and not explain anything. He was already preparing to speak to her in a bad way, taking out his sword. Isel saw all this and just sighed, telling him to stop doing stupid things. The man, finally angry, pulled out his sword with the words that she was too brazen to such a mollusk. He clearly intended to harm her. Isel was not afraid and grinned maliciously, not understanding whether this was a manifestation of courage or stupidity. The man, being furious, attacked her with a ball, wanting to teach her manners. However, he did not have time to reach her, when he suddenly felt a strong pain in the throat area. Having stopped in a stupor, he held his throat and felt blood. Malmond has returned to the arms of the Lord. His spirit will be remembered until the end of time, a certain system reported. The man's body fell to the ground. His head was severed from the body and bounced to the other side. Everything was covered in blood. The cause of death is suicide due to overexcitation. The system continued. Everyone was shocked by what they saw and started screaming in fear. Isel said she warned about it. She insisted that this would not have happened if she had been listened to. She also warned them that if anyone raised a hand against her, they would end up the same way. Her expression inspired terror and fear. She explained that it was just self-defense. Everyone was shocked and could not believe that the head had been cut off. They asked why she did it and wanted to know what she wanted from them, to which she easily replied that all you need to do is fight well, win and obey. She added that it was so easy. Izzle's attention was attracted by the voice of the system, which reported that the group had been formed. The heroes had to be moved to free slots. The system compiled a list that included Riley, Ranto, Marilyn, Kelkert, and Jackson. They were added to the group 1. The fairy, seeing this, realized that the master had decided to start. She ordered everyone to get ready. Flying high, she shouted, "Open up the rift." And a second later, some magical gates began to open. She called all the members of the first group while they were standing in a state of shock. She was pointing with a smile on her face at the gate that had just opened. She ordered them to go there if they didn't want to repeat the fate of that mercenary. A guy named Islat Khan asked Izzle to take her time, which annoyed her since it was not the first time she had seen him. She asked him what he needed this time. The guy asked her if she wanted to climb to the top of the tower. He offered to ask the master to choose a weapon for them. He argued that they are 1 star and do not even have a basic weapon. He asked her if she wanted to send them to certain death. A girl named Jen didn't understand what he was talking about. She didn't know what a tower was or why Isel knew it. Islat Khan continued to speak. He mentioned that a valuable 2-star warrior, Malmont Karl, had just died. He asked to give them at least something. The system showed the characteristics of the deceased man. Malmont Karl, 2 stars. Level 1, experience, 0 divided by 10. Class, beginner. Power, 14. Intelligence, 10. Health, 12. Dexterity, 12. Skills, fundamentals of fencing, level 1. The fairy, having looked at the body of the deceased and his characteristics, agreed with Islam Khan. Izzle turned to the master to get equipment for the heroes. She asked if he wanted to give them weapons to increase their chances of winning. She typed all this appeal through a pop-up keyboard in the form of a hologram. The system has already notified that heroes without equipped weapons start fighting with an old wooden sword. If you put weapons in the arsenal of heroes, they equip it. The master could choose a weapon for them. The system continued that the starting equipment for 10 heroes will cost 50,000 gold. We are given information that the master of Ennet has acquired an iron sword, a weak bow, and a Morgenstern. The man who was in the first group recalled that this guy's name was Khan. He asked him if Han knew anything about this place, to which the guy replied that he didn't know much since he hadn't been here for a long time. The girl had suspicions about this guy after his words that he had not been here for a long time. But the girl did not have time to collect her thoughts. When Khan said that he knew for sure that they needed to prepare well, he advised them to go to the arsenal and buy weapons. He pointed his finger at the location of the arsenal and also said that everything would start soon. Everyone asked him with perplexity and indignation, what other beginning? To which he only briefly replied, the battle. But this only disturbed people even more. They kept asking about what other battle he had in mind. Everyone was in a panic. Someone said that he did not know how to fight, and someone offered to take a weapon first and then everything else. And a moment later, they had already sorted out all the weapons among themselves. A group of 5 people headed towards the gate. The man who was walking in front noticed that the corpse had disappeared somewhere. When he asked the fairy about it, she just waved them off and directed them to move forward. They came to the gate, and the man stuck his fingers in there. But they were immediately pulled away from there. Afraid to go any further, Isel's patience was running out. She hurried them on while the others refused to enter. Meanwhile, Jenna and Han were choosing their weapons. The red-haired girl chose arrows and a bow for herself. She looked with surprise at the Khan, who was taking up a shield. She was thinking that she should team up with him. Jenna asked directly if he knew what was behind that gate, and continued to ask a stream of questions. Why do they need weapons? Where are they located? What kind of fairy is this? What is it? She asked, to which Khan replied that she was asking too many questions. He only briefly explained that they go to the arena to kill enemies, and the rest does not depend on them. When the system suddenly reported that Merlin has returned to the arms of the Lord, his fighting spirit will be remembered until the end of time, Khan got angry, and Jenna didn't understand what was going on. Suddenly, the system continued to announce that all the participants had returned to the arms of the Lord. All 4 participants were dead. Khan said he didn't expect anything else from 1 star, and Jenna still didn't understand what was going on. Suddenly, the system announced the death of the last participant, and thus Group 1 was destroyed. They lost. He was even a little surprised that it happened so quickly. Isel was very angry and called them useless cretins. She couldn't believe they had died on the first floor. Since the first group lost, the system created a new group. This time the band was formed from Khan, Jenna, Dajjal, Grisha, and Carl. A new group of 1-star heroes was created. The fairy screamed ominously, urging the remaining ones to move forward. Han said it was their turn, and Jenna was wondering why no one had come back. One elderly participant of the game approached the fairy, saying that he had arthritis. He claimed that he could not even walk and asked to feel sorry for the old man. Jenna, not believing him, asked again about arthritis since before that he walked normally. The old man replied that he had just started to get sick. The fairy was so angry that she was shaking with anger. She called them idiots. Jenna noticed that Han moved forward and pulled the old man with her. She argued that it was necessary to unite in order to survive. The old man was indignant, shouting that she did not understand because he had arthritis. The fairy had the last drop of patience, and she shouted at them, demanding that they prepare for battle. One of the participants did not understand who to fight. Grisha said that he had never held a spear in his hands before. The Khan walked in front, holding a sword and shield in his hands. Isel finally told them that they would definitely cope. The last thing that was heard before they entered the gate was the old man's screams that his stomach was spinning. As soon as they entered, they saw glowing arches. They immediately began to wonder what kind of place this was. Someone even suggested that it was some kind of temple. Various inscriptions were written on the walls, but the most basic inscription that shone brightly was in front of them. As it turned out, this is the main dungeon. Their task was to climb to the top and save the world. Just below the inscription, it was indicated how many floors had already been passed. At the moment, 0 floors have been passed. The system reported that the gate was opening. Khan assured the other participants that there is no need to panic and we need to move forward. And literally a second later there was a flash. All the heroes ended up on some kind of field. They started looking around to see where they were. The system has shown that this is their first task. Conquest. Goal: destroy the enemies. And many level 3 goblins appeared in front of them. They were small in stature, but they were quite intimidating. They had a huge knife with a wooden shield, and their red eyes and sharp fangs only enhanced the image of the monster. Islak Khan said it was a battlefield. He reminded them that if they didn't fight, they would die. So he offered to pull himself together. But before Khan could finish, all 3 participants had already fled, throwing their weapons. Jenna was the only one left. Khan, seeing this picture, cursed, and Jenna screamed and asked the old man where his arthritis had gone. The system showed that Jenna was experiencing fear. All characteristics are lowered by 30%. The old man, still running away, replied that he felt better, just like Jenna. The others had their stats lowered by 30% due to fear. 3 men who were running away suddenly crashed into an invisible wall. They started to get indignant, asking why they couldn't get out. Someone complained of pain, and someone asked to let him out, as he needed to go to the toilet. The old man began pitifully knocking on the wall, desperately asking to let him out. Khan, turning to them, called them cowards. His attention was attracted by Jenna, who asked him if they could get out if they killed the goblin. Khan asked Jenna if she could shoot, to which she replied that her father was a hunter. The guy offered her to shoot them while he was in close combat. Jenna agreed. They realized that while those three were pitifully beating against the wall, they would have to fight together. The goblins moved towards them. The guy has never held a sword in his life, as well as a shield. His name is Islat Khan, and his real name is Khan Os Jin. He got into a terrible game where everything depends on luck. An active struggle has begun against many goblins and two heroes. Choose Me, a mobile game from the publisher Mobius. The goal of the game is to get to the 100 floors of the tower. In this game, items are created to improve and strengthen the heroes, as well as tactics are being worked out to pass each floor. Until yesterday, the main character was a simple man. He downloaded this game to his smartphone. When he opened the game, an ad appeared in the game. As it turned out, thanks to the help of masters around the world, the milestone of 1 million downloads was reached. A special event was held in honor of this. Information about the event was given just below. 1. The possibility of getting 1,000 crystals for free. 2. For entering the game, you can get 1 high-ranked hero card. 3. And most importantly, the opening of the paranormal dungeon of Advent. Khan, seeing this announcement, thought that finally there was a normal event in this garbage game. The maximum rank of heroes is 7 stars. The main character had a hell of a bad luck. He opened 1,000 cards, but did not receive the hero of 7 stars, although everyone already has them. The guy thought that in a paranormal dungeon with a small chance of falling out of the Book of Revolution, being able to create a hero of 7 stars is a good chance to try. This game differs from its kind by rather harsh rules. All heroes have only 1 life. Islat Khan thought that regardless of the number of stars, it would be impossible to return them. He decided it was better to send unimportant characters to investigate. The system showed that the dungeon is open, but suddenly the game starts ticking red with words of warning. The system showed that his characters feel fear. Then a list of his 5-star characters appeared, who, out of fear, lowered all the characteristics by 30%. The correct version of the text with corrected grammatical errors. The guy didn't understand what they were afraid of. Then he saw how Derder's character wanted to retreat. He was upset because of such a quick loss. He was reassured by the fact that he would at least look at the boss's movement patterns. The system showed that Derder was in a panic. The main character was surprised by the dark monster that appeared. He was level 999. In the game, it was seen how he killed the last character. Han couldn't believe that level 999 monsters existed. He considered it a bug. The game showed that he lost. The guy reduced everything to a system error. The system showed him the players who had returned to the arms of the Lord. He was a little upset that they died before he even saw anything. I considered it a futile attempt. Suddenly, this monster stared with its red eyes at the main character. It looked very creepy. He said he had found it. The guy's face was frozen with universal horror. He did not understand what had happened, when suddenly everything was plunged into darkness. He couldn't see anything, and that scared him. The system reported that an account was being created. The young man did not understand what kind of account. The game gave him to choose a name from 2 to 6 characters. Spaces and special characters were forbidden, but the guy was not up to it. He wondered how he got here. The system reported that the name in it is free and offered to take this name. The guy thought that this name was an abbreviation of anything, and then the system made a choice that he would take this name. The main character was outraged because he didn't press anything. He didn't understand what was going on. The game welcomed Enit with the arrival in the world of Choose Me. The system offered to undergo training, at the end of which you can receive a reward. Enit answered satisfactorily. Islat Khan was in the center of the city, which was burning. The game has begun. A guy named Islat Khan lived in an unremarkable provincial town. The city of Tanya is a land where people live together with other races. An unknown enemy has attacked these peaceful lands. To save the world, the master had to climb to the top of the tower. A lot of heroes will help him. The main character looked around in fright. The system gave information about the task, to destroy the goblins who invaded the city. Han didn't understand which goblins the game was talking about, even though one of them was standing in front of him. He just couldn't believe it. It all seemed unreal to him. But he didn't have time to figure out what was going on, as the goblin launched an attack. He jumped on the main character with a knife. But Khan managed to defend himself thanks to the sword he had. The system reported that the battle was happening automatically, and added, watch the high-class battles of the combat AI. Han was able to gather his strength and push the goblin away, dealing a fatal blow when he fell. The guy couldn't accept that he had personally killed another creature. The game reported that the task was completed. Khan raised the level and received a reward, which was in the mail. Now the main character was in a different location, safer and calmer. Now that he was safe, he could concentrate on his thoughts. Khan began to understand what was inside the game. When he looked around, examining the area, he realized that this place was familiar to him. It was a location from the game Choose Me. While he was confused, the system turned to him, Master, Would you like to get an allied hero before the next task? He had to click summon in the main menu. The first draft was free. Khan received 500 crystals for a high-ranking summoning. And suddenly the light flashed. A super rare hero appeared in front of him. As it turned out, the master of Enin called the 4-star hero Shay. Khan was surprised by her call. He thought the same thing had happened to him. The guy assumed that another player had called him. While he was thinking about it, the hero who was called opened his eyes and spoke. She asked the main character who he was. We are given a characterization of the character. Her name is Shay Laichtri. She has 4 stars. Level 1, experience 0 divided by 10. Class, Knight. Strength, 19. Intelligence, 10. Health, 18. Dexterity, 22. Skills, Combat Analysis Level 1. Advanced Fencing Level 1. Knight Determination Level 1. The guy introduced himself to her as Han So-jin. In response, she also gave her name and added that Han-jun is an unusual name. Khan asked me to call him by his first name correctly. The game moved the heroes to free slots to create a new group. Han and Shay formed a band. After that, they were sent to the dungeon. We are moving to the battlefield. Shay easily chopped off the heads of goblins. She noticed that he was a beginner since Han was weak. He justified himself by being here for the first time. Unlike him, who had never held a sword in his hands before, Shay easily dealt with goblins. The task was completed. She raised the level. The most valuable hero is Shay. There was a huge difference between their characters. She had 3 more stars, which the main character understood. But after that, he had a problem. After some time, the system reports that the heroes fought well. They started the last part of the training. There are huge gates in front of them. Synthesis is a way to strengthen heroes. The synthesis gate has opened. Khan was very scared. You could say he's already buried himself. When suddenly a voice called him. It was a fairy who was viciously shouting at him to get inside faster. She mentioned that the master is waiting. Khan looked at her with a dull look and was silent. He called her by her first name Izzle. The fairy was surprised that he knew her name and asked how he knew her and who he was. He continued to look at her indifferently and thought to himself that he was a gambler. However, he told her that his name was Han Seo-jin. The fairy opened a book with characters and tried to find him there. When Isel didn't find him there, she couldn't believe it. She asked if his name was Khan Islat. However, she didn't need this information as she noticed that even his icon was different. She exclaimed that he did not look at all like Khan Islat from Tonya. The main character got angry and replied that he was Han So-jin from Seoul. He demanded to return him home properly. The fairy asked him if he was from Earth. Khan ironically replied that he was not from Mars. Isel stood in silence for a second, apparently gathering her thoughts. Then she cursed loudly, not believing how it was even possible. Complains that he's going to go crazy. She shouted at him to come to the synthesis. Khan started arguing with her and said that he was not going to go there for anything. He said he was going to die there. Isel denied this and claimed that they were just sinking. But Khan believed that this was tantamount to death. Isel got tired of arguing and, against his will, pushed him inside. Shay was already inside, waiting for Han. She heard the whole argument and noted that it was noisy. The synthesis of heroes has begun. The guy's body was irradiated with blue light. He really wanted to avoid it. Synthesis, strengthening heroes by combining them. One hero must sacrifice himself to strengthen the other. This means that one of the heroes will be absorbed by the other. The problem was that the main character was Shay, who had 4 stars while he only had 1. An adequate player would never sacrifice Shay for such a character, the guy thought. He closed his eyes and prepared for the fact that he would simply be absorbed into the synthesis. Synthesis is complete. The guy opened his eyes and was surprised that he hadn't disappeared. On the contrary, he felt a surge of strength. He looked at Shay and saw that she was disappearing into the bright light. He couldn't believe it. He asked her why she was disappearing. It was incomprehensible to him, because she had 4 stars. But Shay said with ease and a smile on her face that this was her fate, since he was chosen. Her body gradually disappeared, and before she completely dissolved, she wished the main character good luck with a warm smile on her face. Khan fell into a stupor. He was surprised by what had just happened. He didn't understand what had happened at all. We are being transported to the present. A goblin attacked the man and killed him. Grisha returned to the arms of the Lord. Jen, seeing the goblins attacking those men, shouted for them to fight. Khan ordered her not to be distracted, otherwise they would kill her. And so our main character survived. Synthesis is made by digesting heroes. The one you want to merge is chosen, and you drag. Khan reduced it to the fact that he may have been confused, or the player does not understand how to play at all. In any case, he was glad that the master turned out to be a cretin, but he still considered this game a garbage dump. Thanks to his efforts and experience, Khan learned how to deal with goblins. He killed a couple of goblins and turned to Jen, asking what happened to the rest of the heroes. She replied that one was killed, and what happened to the second, she did not have time to finish, as the Khan interrupted her. He said they would deal with them later. Suddenly, a goblin attacked the guy from behind and cut off his hand with one blow. Han cried out loudly in pain. The main character did not know how he got inside the game. But one thing was clear to him for sure, he was Han So-jin. He was called a 1-star hero. Han forcefully hit the goblin that attacked him and killed him. He remembered how he came to this world. Right before he got here, a level 999 monster looked into his eyes and laughed. Han was sure it wasn't a coincidence and he was transported here by this monster. He cut off the goblin's head and thought that the monster that brought him here had messed with the wrong person. He felt power and anger. The fight was over. There were goblin bodies lying around, and Han was sitting next to them. His severed arm was lying nearby. Jenna came up to him and looked at him excitedly. She wanted to ask about his arm, but he assured her that it would heal when they returned. Players almost do not directly control the battles, as the combat AI automatically conducts battles. Despite this, the game has received 1 million downloads. The reason for this could be the fact that players could observe this world like gods. Khan understood this well. Sitting on the ground without an arm and losing a lot of blood, he grinned and looked up. He was sure that the watcher was having fun there. He was the same player himself. The creation of items, tactics, leveling of heroes and hidden opportunities attracted him. Khan said out loud that the game might seem bad, but asked not to quit it. He turned to Loki, who called the top 5 player choose me, and stated that the observer would see how he would get to the end. Despite his shabby appearance, there was fire in his eyes. The system reported that the floor was passed. Jenna raised her level, and the reward was 2,000 gold, iron x2, copper x1 and leather x1. The game showed the cards of the dead players. Only 2 heroes survived, Islat Khan and Jenna Kure. Khan accepted the situation and stopped complaining. He believed that complaints were only suitable for losers, and he could not afford to give up. He kept running, thinking about the world of the game Choose Me. However, he realized that he was a hero with only 1 star and that there were only 2 types of death on the battlefield and during synthesis. He understood that his chances of survival were extremely small, and that heroes with 1 star could hardly be useful. Khan understood that he needed to improve in order to survive, take revenge and return home. He decided to find out what he needed to do to become stronger. He realized that he had weak characteristics, slow pumping, and that in this case he could be quickly thrown out of the game. The system showed his characteristics. Islat Khan level 544 50th. Class, beginner, strength, 15, intelligence, 15, health, 15, dexterity, 15, skills, no. The main character realized that he needed to do everything possible to survive and return home. He knew that if he couldn't adapt to the rules of the game, he would die. Khan understood that he needed to strengthen not only his body, but also his spirit, otherwise his chances of survival would decrease. He decided to control his emotions, because he understood that otherwise it could lead to his death. He had to run very fast, and it reminded him of serving in the army. The main character Khan was actively engaged in physical exercises, training his body. He was used to being alone, as he grew up without anyone caring about him. He needed to return to this state. When he was doing push-ups, Jenna came up to him and asked what he was doing. Han dryly replied that he was training and asked what she needed. She was offended by his rude tone, and she replied that she was just looking for him. The girl stood silently for a while, gathering her thoughts, and yet decided to start a conversation. She spent the night thinking about what to do next. Jenna took a bow and 1 arrow, and asked Han if there was a way to get out of here. Apparently, Jenna wanted to join Han to increase her chances of survival. She aimed at the scarecrow and went on to say that her father was a hunter and taught her to shoot an arrow. She claimed she wouldn't be a burden. She, like Khan, believed that nothing would change if she just sat and cried. After saying her last words, she fired a bow and hit the scarecrow right in the head. Jenna was sure Han knew how to survive here. Han stopped training and asked if yesterday's battle was her first, to which she replied in the affirmative. He asked how good she was with onions, to which the redhead replied that more or less. He saw her profile. Jenna Kure, level 2, experience, 5/20th. Class, beginner, strength, 11, intelligence, 10, health, 11, agility, 12. Skills, basics of archery level 1. He remembered that she had received 4 stats points yesterday. Han understood that although she was weaker than him in this, but she had the skill and easily coped with killing goblins in her first battle. The guy appreciated her and realized that teaming up with her would have its advantages. He noted that she quickly moves away from the death of other people and knows how to set goals. He valued her as a rough diamond. Khan agreed to help her, and Jenna held out her hand to him, remembering her father's words that connections are an important part of life. She was glowing with happiness and realized that her father was right. Khan also extended his hand in return and shook it. Jenna said she was happy to work with him. The system highlighted the inscription that Jenna favored Khan. A relationship bonus was received. It turned out that when creating a group with another hero, a bonus is given. The guy thought to himself that these notifications were starting to annoy him. The main character wandered around the area and called Izzle. She appeared, but was outraged by the call. She exclaimed angrily that she was busy. Khan mockingly replied that he did not know that the busy comes so quickly. The fairy ignored this and said that she would not answer his stupid questions, no matter how much he asked, and that all the answers were in the tower, where you need to climb. But Khan suddenly asked her something completely different. Why is he the only one who sees status windows? Iso was unsettled by this. She began to openly lie that she didn't understand what he was talking about. But Khan perfectly saw her level above her head, and in honor of the proof he named her level 257. Isil was surprised that he could really see the level, not believing how it was possible. She shook it a little out of surprise. Han realized from her reaction that only he could see the system messages addressed to the master. Khan asked the fairy what would happen if the master quit the game, to which she replied that he prayed that this would not happen. Jenna was standing next to Han. The guy remembered about synthesis. Synthesizing him and Shay was a pretty serious mistake. The master has merged a 4-star hero. The chance of getting such a character is 1%. He still couldn't figure out how a player could spend such a successful character on him. Khan, after Isil's words, thought about the game account. The account had a hard link to the phone. It would not have been possible to start it again. He remembered that the last time the master entered the game after a week. He asked Isil about the passage of time here and on Earth, to which the fairy viciously refused to answer. Khan realized that the time was different, and thanked her with a grin for her honesty, thereby making her even more angry. She called him a fucking 1-star jerk. Han realized that Jenna could not harm him, since she was obliged to obey her master or use force only in self-defense. He understood that this was the only way he could learn the rules of this world and survive. Jenna asked Han what they were talking about, to which he replied that they had to walk 100 floors of the tower. He explained that the beings, who are called masters, issue tasks through Isil, and that they are required to complete these tasks in order to advance further. Han is confident that if they reach the top of the tower, they will be able to get out of here. Jenna asked if they would have to fight a lot on their way, and Han replied that that was why he was training to become stronger. Jenna also wondered if they would be alone, and Han explained that the master could summon other heroes so they wouldn't be left alone. Now Khan understands that every decision he makes must be considered and considered, although their lives still remain in the hands of the player. After a whole day of training, the main character learned another interesting feature of this world. All the essentials and food are updated every day. You can also get other things, just think about it, and they will appear by the fireplace or in the closet. But with game items, weapons or money, this will not work. Khan also noticed that the results of the training are also different. Now he knew about mechanics that he didn't even know about when he was playing himself. For example, even among the heroes of the same star class, there are more talented ones. Their distinguishing feature is diligence. Although training does not raise the characteristics or level, they help to acquire and develop new skills. Khan didn't know about it. Now it's hard for him to say that the heroes were controlled by AI. Soon the wizard will start sorting the heroes according to 3 criteria. The first is the power of the spirit. The master does not need heroes who tend to panic on the battlefield. The second is skills. High-ranked heroes are called up already with skills, for example, like Shay. And 1-star ones require hard work to uncover them. And the third is physical training. It is the last point that Khan is engaged in. He works hard to train his body well. On the 3rd day of training, the system reported that the master had entered the game. During all these training sessions, Khan was able to get 2 skills, the basics of fencing and the basics of using a shield. So far, this is the maximum that he could do. Han warned Jenna that the master was already here and she should be ready for action. Jenna was surprised by the arrival of the master, to which Khan replied that there was nothing to be surprised, it had already been 3 days. The system reported that the master had started the summoning, and Han made it clear to Jenna that there could be up to 5 people in the group, so 3 more would most likely arrive. Sometime later, the system reported that the master entered and brought 3 more heroes, and 3 new characters immediately appeared. They were puzzled by what was happening and looked around until Jenna warned them to prepare for battle and said that explanations would be later. Now they need to survive. Khan was already heading for the rift. The man who had just been added to the group didn't understand anything and asked Jenna who she was in general. Isil opened a rift, and the system reported the addition of 3 participants to the first group. Jenna and Han were ready to fight, while the others stood aside, not daring to come closer. The game gave the same advice as the last time. Heroes without equipped weapons start a fight with an old iron sword. If you put weapons in the arsenal of heroes, they equip it. The master could choose a weapon for them. Khan realized that there were no weapons for them, since the old ones remained with the dead heroes. Isil hurried the newcomers to get inside, but they climbed to the ferry with questions and complaints. One of the men was extremely aggressive, and Jenna, to calm him down, restrained him and asked him to stop, warning that it was better not to run into him. However, the man reacted angrily and thought she was related to this ferry by asking her about it. Jenna was taken aback by such a statement and began to justify that she herself was also dragged here. The main character told her that she didn't have to bother, as they would soon understand everything themselves. The girl left them alone, and the men began to climb to Isil again. The aggressive man complained that his wife was waiting for him and demanded to show him the way out. The second man began to defend himself that he was just a farmer and had no money at all. All this angered Isil, and she demanded that they get lost. The guy and the girl were standing apart from them. Jenna was still worried about them compared to Khan, who said not to pay attention to them since it was none of their business. Isel got tired of them and somehow pushed them all away. She told them it was better to just obey her, like those two over there. After all, they all gathered and entered the rift. Finally, the fairy waved and wished them to have fun. The system showed that he had gone up to the second floor. The task was to conquer, goal, destroy the enemies. The heroes found themselves in a glowing circle. It was still the same location as last time, with the difference that there were trees here. While the three newcomers were shocked and lost, the main character and Jenna prepared for battle. Now there were not only goblins in front of them, but also steppenwolves. The monsters were level 4. All three heroes, seeing these monsters, were very scared, thereby lowering their characteristics by 30%. Since the main character could see the system notification, he looked at Jenna and noticed that she also lost 30% of her characteristic due to fear. Khan was surprised that she also went there. He suddenly hit her with his hand, which scared her very much. He mockingly asked how much porridge she had eaten, but the girl yelled at him so that he wouldn't scare her like that anymore. Khan ignored this and said that 2 goblins were on it, and he would deal with the wolves. The system showed that Jenna was no longer afraid. Han calmed down, glad that she was just a little scared. But he didn't expect anything from the newcomers. The attack from the monsters began. The wolf attacked Khan, but he managed to defend himself. He pierced the monster with his sword and realized that one blow was not enough. Besides, his weapons left a lot to be desired. But that was enough for Khan. He stabbed hard with his sword again, piercing the monster. Khan easily killed the wolf, which was amazing. But he couldn't relax, because immediately after that he was attacked by another wolf from the side. Fortunately, he managed to react quickly and protect himself with a shield. Abruptly removing the shield, he struck with his sword with lightning speed, killing the wolf in 2 strikes. Thus, the wolves were defeated. He ran to Jenna to find out what was going on with the goblins. But it turned out that she no longer needed his help, as the goblins were killed by a lot of archery shots. The girl was still standing, holding the bow in her hands and breathing heavily from fear. Khan was surprised by such a picture and commented that they were porcupines. He asked her how many times she fired, but she couldn't answer. Khan asked her to calm down, as they were already dead. The system reported that the floor had been cleared, and Han and Jenna had raised their level. Khan was the most valuable hero. As a reward, they were given 5,000 gold, iron ore X1 and leather X3. They were returned to their previous location, and the game congratulated them on clearing the second floor. In addition, she informed them that they should go up to the 3rd floor. The floor shook under their feet. It scared Jenna, and she asked what was going on. Khan replied that they had captured the 2nd floor and were now going up to the 3rd. The guy understood that the master could continue to climb, and he was a little worried that they were going to sweep the 3rd floor. He looked at those men and knew that at this rate, he and Jen would not last any longer. But then the master left the game, which greatly calmed the Khan. He let out a sigh of relief. Isel, who was flying nearby, was also happy about this. She began to complain that she was very tired. To such a Khan, the announcement on her part began to seem strange. How could she be tired if they did all the work? Han thought to himself that they passed through 1 floor in a day and concluded that if the time here is 3 times faster, then the master will return in 3 days. Khan's characterization showed that he had risen to the 6th level. His intelligence decreased by 1, but his strength increased by 2 points. He noticed that the stats had increased by only 4, but the pumping speed had improved overall. He's getting stronger. He was glad that the master was in no hurry. If they were constantly going straight up, problems would begin. Meanwhile, those 2 scandalous men were interrogating Jenna. They wanted to know why they needed to fight, what kind of monsters they were and where they ended up. The girl was confused because of such a stream of questions and did not know where to start. Khan looked at them disapprovingly and still believed that the 1-star heroes were ordinary people. They have never been to war and have never fought. Jenna tried to explain to them that you need to fight to survive, and that's all that matters right now. But these individuals responded extremely aggressively. One of them started complaining that he had never held a sword in his life and why he was doing it at all. Now Khan understood why they were considered expendable. He remembered the hero who died first. Malmont was a 2-star mercenary. The guy had an idea that maybe heroes with a lot of stars were called up earlier. High-ranked heroes do not hesitate in battle, unlike 1-star ones who panic. And the 3-star ones seem to be ready for everything. Han remembered Shay. He speculated that maybe they already knew they were going to be called up, or they had a reason to fight monsters. He was sure Shay knew something. Jenna approached Han, asking where such newcomers come from. She asked him if he wanted to try to explain everything to them, to which Khan replied that he did not want to waste time on this. Jenna explained that if they understood everything, they could become their allies. It was better than nothing for her, but Khan was convinced that they would soon die. I suggest we see what happens next. He understood that even if they did not die in battle, then they would simply be synthesized. Khan told them that only the 2 of them would fight. Therefore, they may not bother. The same married man approached Khan and said he had questions, but the guy turned away, not going to waste time on him. This attitude angered the man, and he grabbed the main character by the collar. Khan did not slow down and hit him in the jaw. The man fell to the ground, and Han looked up at him, reminding him that they were hiding behind their backs while he and Jenna were fighting. The man fearfully stretched out his hands forward, defending himself and trying to explain himself. Khan left him alone and left. 2 other participants immediately ran up to the man. Jin followed Han. He asked her if she was happy now, to which she only grinned. The next day they continued training. After physical training, weapons training began. Although it's hard to call it any special training, he just waves a wooden sword and Jenna shoots an arrow. Thanks to the training, Khan was able to raise his 2 skills to the 2nd level. That trio didn't even show up. It seemed that they were going to look for a way out of here, as if there was one here. Jenna was shooting arrows at Khan, while he was fighting off arrows with a shield and a sword. One arrow hit him in the leg, and Khan cursed in pain. Jenna, worried, came up to him and asked if he was all right. Khan, pulling the arrow out of her leg, assured her that there was no need to worry. He said that this place was different from the real world and his leg was instantly regenerated. The systems report that Khan has acquired the pain threshold skill. Getting to his feet, he told Jenna to continue. Pain wasn't a problem for him. That meant he was still alive. Khan kept asking Jenna to shoot. She in turn complied with his request, even though she thought it was time to stop. The system informs that Khan's skills fundamentals of fencing and fundamentals of shield mastery are combined into a new skill. Khan received the skill shield and sword technique, basics, level 1. The day came when the master entered the game. Izel, in her repertoire, shouted at them that the master had appeared and demanded that they quickly gather in the square. She also kept threatening them that there would be trouble. Jenna was determined. She said that she feels great after training and that her hands are already itching. Khan appreciated her actions and said that she gets used to this world faster than he does. Jenna wanted to blow off steam. And now they finally saw those 3 heroes. As always, those 2 noisy men approached the ferry and started complaining again. The 3rd young guy decided to stand silently behind them. That farmer kept asking to be brought back home. He was whining that he was tired of eating 1 potato. And the 2nd married man said he didn't want to fight. They both drove the ferry, and like last time, she threw them away with 1 blow. She screamed that they had already got her. I warn you that he will beat them up, that they will apologize later. The hype started, and the ferry started beating them all up. Cries for help were heard. Isel ordered them inside. Now all 3 beaten newcomers humbly agreed with her. They went up to the 3rd floor. 4 larger goblins now appeared in front of them. This time they were in armor and with more serious weapons, such as a crossbow and an axe. Khan noted that their strength and skills have improved. This time, Jenna was calm and determined. The guy ordered to act the same way as in training. They rushed into battle, as the main character thought. The 3rd floor turned out to be easy for them. The system reports that the floor is cleared. Jenna has raised her level. The most valuable hero is Jenna. The reward was 7,000 gold, iron ore X2, leather X1. Jenna noticed that they did a good job, and it even seemed a little boring to Khan. The girl noticed that those 3 were just standing again, but Khan didn't care about that. He believed that it was better to let them get all the experience, since it is not credited without participating in the battle. The system gave advice to the master: send disobedient heroes to repeat the passage of dungeons to force them to fight. The master was given a choice whether he wanted to repeat the passage, to which he agreed. Han warned Jenna about this. She realized that it was too early to relax. They returned to the 1st floor again. The girl said that it's not so bad, because these are the same monsters as before. This floor was easily cleared. The most valuable hero was Jenna. The reward was 1,000 gold. Suddenly the master wanted to pass the passage again. Khan was alarmed by this, and he realized that the master was not going to give them a break. They repeatedly passed the 1st floor. This time, Khan was with the valuable hero. The reward was still 1,000 gold. The master sent them to the 3rd floor again. They had to go through it all again. The main characters are already exhausted. Jenna complained that she was tired and asked if the master would send them there again. Khan couldn't have known that. Fortunately, this was their last walkthrough for today. Jenna, coming out of the rift, complained to Khan that she was too tired to guard them. She asked how long it would last. Han assured her that there was no need to worry since this was the last time. The girl did not understand what he was talking about, since the master simply does not pay attention to them. Han didn't want her not to think he wanted to mess with insects. They came to the site of the synthesis. The system reported that the synthesis process was starting. The 3 heroes didn't understand what was going on. The system announced that you need to drag the heroes that the master wants to sacrifice. Khan felt that these assholes never took their chance. We are given a map of the game's location. Their location was divided into 6 compartments and erected by huge walls in a huge circle. These compartments included a training arena, a living area, a workshop, a square, a summoning hall, and an air landing. The synthesis hall was in the workshop, and there was an arsenal nearby. The rift of space and time opened up on the square. In the synthesis hall, Han was thinking that they had a chance. Maybe not even one. Although most of the little things are not shown on the screen, the master still has a general understanding of what is happening in the game. He knows about the achievements of the heroes, sees who is fighting and who is just standing aside. Han and Jenna have been added to favorites. Isel ordered Jenna and Elsons to go to the synthesis hall right now. They were both wary, but Khan calmed the girl down and said that she would be fine. Elsons approached the guy and asked what would happen if they went there. Khan replied that he would get what he deserved. The man exclaimed that it was unfair, since he was dragged here against his will. But Khan dryly replied that no one was interested in his opinion. Isel, who was flying nearby, agreed with his words for the first time. Han continued talking. He asked the man if he really thought he could hide behind the backs of others. He believed that even though he did not know how to fight, it was enough to at least try. The man had nothing to say. Isel, adding oil to the fire, said that everyone was already tired of messing with them, pushing him to get inside. The man and Jenna entered the hall, and the synthesis launch began. Alnos beat the doors to the last, demanding to let him out. Suddenly, his body lit up with a blue light. He cried out in fright. The synthesis was completed. The girl raised her level and got the skill Excellent Eye. Leaving the hall, she was surprised. She asked what happened and added that she saw the man just disappear. Khan replied that they get rid of useless heroes here. It was his turn. He mockingly asked which of the newcomers would get this honor. The two heroes were scared after such an announcement. The fairy pointed her finger at the heroes, calling them inside. It was Han and Toby. He is a married man. He fell into a stupor of fear. Being already inside the hall, he also tried to get out of there, hoping that he would be sent home. Khan responded by saying that he could believe in anything. A loud shout followed. The synthesis was completed. Toby disappeared into the bright light. Khan raised his level and got the skill Composure. The main character left the hall. As a result, there was only one young guy left from the newcomers, who made the least noise. Passing by him, Khan said that he was lucky. The guy shivered at his tone. The red-haired girl followed him and asked if the master decided that the hero was no longer needed. Then he would just get rid of him. Khan said that there was nothing to be surprised about. He mentioned that she herself had recently complained about them. Jenna was afraid that she might become unnecessary. The guy replied that there was nothing to be done about it, since with each floor the monsters and heroes that the master calls upon will become stronger. He explained that they would either die in battle or during fusion. The girl drooped and asked if he knew this from the very beginning. He decided not to answer that question. Instead, he asked her to listen to what her father said, that sticking with the right people was the best solution. The next day in the training arena, the girl turned to the Khan with a bow. She said she was hoping for him now. The young man did not understand what this was about. She straightened up and mentioned that he himself had said yesterday that it was necessary to stick to him, and this would save her life. And then she decided to make it clear that now she would count on him. He was surprised by such a statement on her part, but still agreed, demanding that she do what they say. Then she won't have to worry about her life. And then the newcomer turned to them. He asked to be allowed to join them. He apologized for behaving so stupidly and adding so much trouble to them. He understood that he acted like a coward and did nothing, leaving the whole battle to them. Now he was going to change. Khan was suspicious of him and asked why he should trust him. The guy bowed and said he could kneel if they asked. Jenna supported him, saying that he seemed to realize his situation. Khan picked up a spear and asked the novice if he had ever fought monsters. He shared that in the beginning he didn't know how to do anything at all. He threw the spear into the guy's hands. The newcomer was surprised by his words and said that he fights so well. Khan replied that he was just trying to survive. He ordered the guy to take up arms. Han wasn't sure, but he had heard that the spear was the easiest weapon to master for a beginner. The main character asked if he was aware that he would work with this on the strategy of melee, medium and ranged combat. But Jenna answered instead. She said that the near one is a sword, the middle one is a spear, the far one is a bow. She was glad that now all their positions would be closed. Khan agreed with her that it would be the best combination for 3 people without training. He picked up a wooden sword and pointed it at the novice, asking what he was waiting for, thereby calling him to fight. The young man was surprised that they immediately started fighting. He expected to be taught something first, but the Khan could not do this, since he himself had never held a spear in his hands. He rushed into the attack first, saying that he was learning on the go, demanding that he learn. He delivered lightning strikes that the novice was able to repel. Khan said that he had at least a sparring partner, mentioning that he only had a scarecrow. The guy after these words decided to strike too. He closed his eyes and swung his spear. But before he could strike, the Khan ordered him not to close his eyes in the middle of the fight and kicked him in the stomach. The guy bent over in pain and vomited. Khan said that he actually submitted and was disappointed that this was all he was capable of. He added that the monster would have killed him long ago. Jenna asked if he had overdone it since it was his first time. But Khan said he didn't care. He wasn't going to waste time on someone who wasn't capable of anything. Khan asked the newcomer if he had a family. The guy answered in the affirmative, adding that he has a younger sister. Khan noticed that he had at least someone unlike him. He held the tip of the wooden sword to his throat and told him to imagine what would happen to her if he did not return. He suggested that if he was going to die, it would be better not to go to the monsters, as they would tear apart and the synthesis would not be so painful. He advised him not to start something he couldn't handle. These words ignited a fire in his heart, and he clenched his teeth from the surging emotions. Khan, looking at him, grinned, saying that he already likes this look. The newcomer's eyes lit up with fire. The next day, the system reported that the master decided to create an additional building, a forge, and then the forge was built. 500 crystals were spent on the creation. This building pleased the main character. Now he had a blacksmith shop available. He called Isel to him if she could hear him. She appeared, but grumbled who he was to summon her. He clearly replied that she should come up with something new, since such answers are already in cookies. She got very angry, wanting to hit him. But she couldn't do that, so she just waved her fists in front of him, barely touching him. While she was angry, Khan asked if she was forming messages with advice. He noticed that they looked like messages from a forum, and asked if she could go online. She replied that she could and read a little in her spare time. He realized that a forum with strategies was available to her. First the training center, then 10 weapons, then the forge. Isel interrupted him, asking how he knew about it. But he replied that he didn't know one of the most popular posts on the forum that Loki had written. The fairy was surprised that he knew about it. He confirmed that he was also a player. Isel scoffed and said that he is now a low-ranked character on the lower levels, while Mr. Loki is the master of all masters, the god of this game. She believed that he would definitely be in the first place if he received at least one hero of 7 stars. Khan was interested in what she found in him, and the fairy replied that she could make the impossible possible. The guy was mockingly surprised, and Isel doubted whether he was playing for sure since it was a base. She started fluttering, waving her arms and praising Mr. Loki. But the guy interrupted her, asking for forgiveness. Isel stared at him in bewilderment, not understanding why. Han's eyes seemed to light up. The main character confessed that he is Loki. Improvement of buildings. The construction of level 1 contains the main necessary functions. Building level 2 contains additional features and the ability to create additional buildings. The level 3 building opens after level 2 and provides advanced building features. Isel, incredulous, asked what he meant. She was about to start refuting his words when he interrupted her by dictating his account number 46,631,930. He also added that to prevent hacking, the account number of the game is known only to the owner and manager of the server. He pointed it out to her to check it and mockingly asked if she should also tell the male. Isel began to search for something in the data with a serious look. She was still in doubt, and she still found all the evidence and fell into a dumb shock with surprise. Isel stood in silence for some time, and then asked him to give it. Khan didn't understand what to give her, and suddenly, unexpectedly, she pulled out a notebook with a pen and handed it to the guy. She asked for an autograph. Isel was very excited and happy. She happily said that now she will be the coolest in the fan club. Picking up a notebook, Khan asked what other fan club he was talking about. The fairy enthusiastically replied that this was Loki's fan club, the Masters of All Masters. She boasted that she would be a top-level participant if she got an autograph. Khan was not interested in this, so he simply replied that he had never heard of such a thing. Suddenly, Isel realized everything. She was horrified that she had said so many things to the real Loki. But the guy said not to bother, because now he's a 1-star hero, and who cares about that? He signed the autograph and returned the notebook to Isel. The fairy anxiously asked what would happen to Nilfgaard without him. He had no idea. Nilfgaard is his character's settlement. 13 floors of a huge fortress. Capacity of 20,000 people. Most of the buildings there have been improved to 18-22 levels. Huge pumping. But it didn't matter now. The master of the settlement is Khan, and he is here now. Isel became even more alarmed and asked what would happen to the residents now. He said he could dissolve the settlement if he was worried about them. But she drooped, saying that she could not do it. Han knew this because she was just a mid-level moderator who deals with all sorts of little things. Khan asked her about the master of this account and it. He asked if he was also human, and concluded that the heroes who were being called here were not artificial intelligence at all. The fairy replied that it was so. Heroes are called from different worlds, but they are all real people. Han was thinking about the fact that Enit doesn't know about it. He is a simple player who likes to play. For him, heroes are an ordinary worker who can be exposed to any dangers. Khan asked if he would be able to return home if he climbed to the top. The fairy sadly replied that she did not know. He wanted to know, but since she didn't know, he decided to ask another question. He asked who moved him here, but Isel couldn't answer that. The guy sighed in resignation, and the fairy asked for forgiveness for this. But he did not take offense at her, saying that he would find out himself while he was climbing. He decided to find out what access and authority she had. Isel shared that she can give master tips, open and close buildings, help in choosing something. Khan asked if the other master's settlement looked the same. She replied that there was some difference, but in general, yes. The main character thought about it and realized that there are a million of the same worlds. The Mobius Summon, a system for creating an infinite number of heroes with thousands of different skill combinations, turned out to be a lie. Quantum artificial intelligence was just a hoax. The heroes turned out to be a non-advanced mouse, but real people. The bagel system, endless variations of content, in fact, a million different worlds. The hero could not even think that what is happening in the game is real. He realized that his rash actions in the past had doomed many people to death. Khan called Izel, and she answered him. He told her to obey him if she wanted to climb up. Usually always angry, Isel was happy with such an offer this time. In the training arena, the heroes were training, and Khan was making his conclusions. He considered Jenna a genius. She grew at a speed not available to other heroes of her level. This time she was training with a different weapon. Khan appreciated that for the first time holding a dagger, she got used to it so quickly. Well, he couldn't say that about Eren. He believed that with such successes, he would die on the battlefield. The guy in training was amazed by Jenna. She approached Khan with the words that she was giving in, but it didn't really help him. The Khan answered her so that she would not be arrogant and told her to follow him. The girl was surprised and asked what happened. She asked if he wouldn't train his #1 assistant. Then an angry fairy flew up to Jenna, asking how she dared to address him like that. Isel began to think that she was the #1. The girl stared at her in surprise, and a rival spark arose between them. Jenna asked someone to calm her down. Isel, rudely addressing the red-haired girl, almost blurted out who Khan was. She was stopped by Khan, who managed to close her mouth. He subtly hinted that it was time for her to leave. Before she started working, she hissed angrily that she was Loki's first assistant anyway. Then she stopped and corrected the name to Khan. The main character was already regretting that he had told her about himself. Jenna asked who Loki they were referring to which the guy replied that he should not take her seriously, since she was just stupid. They headed towards the warehouse. He remembered that Izel could open buildings and asked her to open a warehouse. The game system reports that Khan found in the warehouse iron X6, leather X3 and boards X4. Taking the necessary items, they headed towards the forge. He also told Isel to open it. She followed his orders flawlessly. Jenna asked what he was up to. Khan replied that he was not going to wield such a mediocre sword forever. From the conversation with Izel, he realized that he was half a hero, half a master. He was wondering if he would be able to enter the zones accessible only to masters. The fairy flew near the guy and addressed him as Loki. She asked what he was going to create, Leviathan or Brunek. He asked in response if it was possible in such a place. They were standing near the stove. The system reported that without improving the structure, without a master forge and without a drawing, a fine would be imposed. She also said that the chance of success is terrible. When asked if he wanted to start the creation, he answered in the affirmative. Isel assumed that he wanted to create an item. Khan replied that it looked like that. The system, after agreeing, asked him to choose the difficulty level, warning that the higher the level, the higher the possible reward. Khan chose the extreme level. Isel was horrified by his choice and reminded him that there are triple penalties. But Han was calm and told her to just watch. It was a mini-game for the masters. It is usually missed, although the awards are substantial. A sword in the form of a hologram appeared in front of him and sorted out into mini cubes. He had 3 minutes to assemble it. Isel exclaimed that it was impossible to understand even the form here. Khan grabbed one cube and said it wasn't a problem for him. The system told him to start. Isel's eyes lit up from the legendary movement of the 1,000 hands technique. Everything was happening so fast that it was impossible to keep track of his hands, which made it seem that he had thousands of hands. Khan managed to assemble the sword in shape. The game congratulated him on his absolute success, and Izel was all fired up by the sight of the sword. It was a forged C-grade longsword, durable, light and sharp. Mediocre materials were skillfully combined. Khan looked at the created sword with pride. Khan continued to create new things. He had already managed to create a balanced short bow, a sharp long spear and a strong iron shield. He realized that it turns out to create only tools with a rank of C, since the quality of materials affects the quality of the product. Isel asked if he was going to continue creating weapons. He replied that it might attract attention, and he didn't need the master to start guessing. The day came when they advanced to the 4th floor. They were on the battlefield. Jenna was testing her updated bow. She got right into the monster and noticed that the tension became stronger. She shared the idea that they would definitely want to steal such a bow. Khan advised using the personal weapon function to prevent this from happening. It was just the 3 of them on the 4th floor. Jenna thought that the master was really strange, sending them here in such numbers. This time there is a new kind of monsters, harpies half women, half birds. Khan, as always, took over the goblins, and left the harpies to Jenna. He told Eren to protect the girl. The attack from the monsters began. Eren started actively swinging his spear, but due to fear lowered his stats by 30%. Han, defending himself from the goblin, told Eren that he was swinging too chaotically. But the guy didn't even seem to listen to him, continuing to desperately try to defend himself. Jenna ran up to him and slapped him in the face, shouting at him to get ready. The blow was so strong that blood flowed from his nose, but it brought him to his senses. Jenna yelled at him, explaining that their lives were at stake. Khan joined in her words and shouted for Eren to pull himself together. Finally, Eren was able to think straight and also rush into battle, so they were able to clear the floor. The system reported that Eren had raised his level, and the most valuable hero was Khan. The reward was 10,000 gold, iron ore X2, leather X3. After the end of the fight, Eren shared his feelings. He said he was just getting in the way again. He asked what would happen to him now, but the system reports that Eren has been added to favorites. Khan told him that he would live for now since the master had added him to the favorites. Jenna and Eren stared at him in surprise. The guy did not immediately believe this ad. Eren shouted joyfully that he could do it. Jenna happily told Khan that first his first subordinate was successful, and now the second one is there too. Khan denied that they were subordinates. Leaving for the arsenal, he thought about these words. He thought it was more likely that his first subordinate would be Surus from Nilfare. He remembered his heroes from his settlement. A group of 5 people, 6-star heroes of the 99th level, each with their own divine and other powerful skills. He hoped that he would be able to meet them again. It was an AFC game, so Surus, the Vice Master, is quite capable of managing. Moreover, Yornet ensures her. They are both so smart that sometimes he wondered if it was really artificial intelligence. But now he realized that they were real people. Meanwhile in Nilfare, a man in a white raincoat approached Surus, asking if she was really going to leave. She told Yornet that every minute was important right now. The man replied that he could not help, so leave the following to her. She wished him good luck and set off. Yornet hoped she was 1,000 masters. We are transported to the Khan's location. The system reports that the residential area has been upgraded to the 2nd level and the limit of heroes in the settlement has been increased. The construction of new buildings has begun. A food point has appeared in the residential area. Now the heroes will be able to receive dishes of higher quality. The training area was also upgraded to the 2nd level, which increased the effectiveness of training. 3 buildings of the arsenal, a blacksmith shop, a carpenter's workshop, and a metalworking workshop were combined into a single building, an equipment workshop. The system congratulates you on increasing the area to the 2nd level. Jenna was very surprised by the new buildings. She asked what happened. Eren was equally surprised. He asked if this master was a great magician, not believing it's even possible. Hannah wasn't surprised. He told them that he had invested the money, assuming that the master liked the game. Naturally, the lively behavior of the characters and the realism of the battle make this game interesting. He thought it was all about the feeling that the characters were real people, not cards. Well, actually, they turned out to be real people. He told the guys that the higher they climb, the better the conditions will be. Han decided to share his thoughts with Izel. He assumed that the master plays at a strictly defined time. Apparently, this is an office worker. He also came to the conclusion that he not only studies the game, but also invests money here. The fairy rejoices at this outcome of events, considered it lucky that this is not some poor student, since he has enough money to buy a set for 65,000 won. In her hands she held 2 bags, one with gold coins, the other with crystals. Unlike other Choose Me games, it does not reward the player with crystals at all for winning a task, and other ways to earn them inside the game can be counted on the fingers. Khan replied to the fairy that it was a great luck to meet a player who was willing to invest real money. Suddenly, the system reports that the master has decided to summon 10 new heroes. The guys gathered at the place of the draft. Eren did not expect that new heroes would be called. Khan replied that the renovation was over and it was time to celebrate the housewarming. There are 2 ways of summoning. The first call for in-game gold, and the second is an advanced call for crystals. Naturally, the second method is much more effective. After all, it is necessary to somehow force players to invest real money. A lot of people appeared on the spot. Immediately, questions began from the newcomers about where they are. People did not understand what had happened, as some of them were at home just a second ago. One man suggested that it was all a dream. Noticing the main character, he approached him, asking who he was. Khan pointed his sword at this man, thereby scaring him. He ordered them to be silent and said that no one would explain anything now. He explained that they needed to survive, and only to the survivors they would explain everything. And then the fairy appeared with her usual tone. She asked the crowd if there were any carpenters among them, and ordered them to go in the direction she was pointing. She also started looking for blacksmiths, metalworkers, or cooks. The crowd started demanding to explain to them what was going on. One of the guys called Izel a little bullshit. The fairy, shouting at them, ordered them to shut up. Jenna asked Han what she was doing. He replied that he distributes the roles in this way. New vacancies have appeared in their town. Khan also added that if the people who died earlier had been called up now, their fate would have been different. This settlement is starting to change. The game created a new group consisting of Jid, Hansen, John, and Teddy, all of whom were 1-star heroes. Their first battle was about to take place, and they were already preparing to fight with swords in their hands, although most of them were scared. At this time, Khan told them to invest to the fullest, because they have few stars. He was very strict with the newcomers, threatening that useless people would not even get raw potatoes. He warned them that the master would decide which of them would be more useful. 1-star heroes will go to the dungeon, and Izel has already opened the rift and told the newcomers to go there faster. The only information Han gave them before he left was that they would die if they couldn't adapt. He also added that most likely it will be the first floor. The rift closed, and it didn't take long before the system reported that the hero John had been killed. Han was even a little surprised that it happened so quickly. Jenna was excited and asked him if it would be better to tell more details, But the guy replied that it was pointless to waste time on those who could not survive even on the first floor. And then the system again notified that another hero had died. As a result, only 2 heroes survived this battle, and 2 died. Isel called 4 new people to pass the floor. They were Dick, Deckard, Sigler, and Chloe. They were all excited after they found out they were going to fight monsters. The newcomers resisted going there, but then Eren stepped in. He approached Isel with a request to add him to them. The fairy told him not to go where he was not asked. Jenna was pleasantly surprised by such an act. She asked Khan if he had always been like this. The guy sighed languidly and asked Isel to let him go with them, arguing that his skills were not far away from the newcomers, believing that this would help him. Isel gave the master the choice of whether to join Eren to the group or not. Sometimes heroes can rush into battle themselves. Their performance in such situations will be increased. Khan turned to Eren, saying he was glad he wanted to help, but he ordered him not to interfere with the newcomers to gain experience. Eren replied that he understood him and entered the portal with the others. While the battle was going on, Jenna complained to Khan that she wanted to go home and eat properly, since they were only fed potatoes all this time. The guy thought to himself that she had completely lost her fear. He started talking about how bright the sky was, as if someone was watching them, just like God, who sees and hears everything. Thus, he hinted to Jenna that perhaps her indignation was heard by the master. She shuddered with fear when she realized this. Han grinned at her and told her not to worry too much, since it wasn't enough that he cared about each of their words. Han knew that the master was not listening to their conversation, and everything that happens here is heavily filtered and sent in short messages. For example, that Jenna is unhappy with the food. After some time, the floor was cleared. No one died this time, and Han asked Eren how many goblins he had killed. The guy replied that only one. Khan was glad that they understood each other. It's time for them to come back. They were glad that they would finally eat something new. When they entered the dining room, they were surprised by the update. Since it looked much better than before, they assumed that if there was a dining room now, would the food become more diverse. Khan replied to them that if the master sees the benefit of their efforts, then perhaps yes. Jenna jumped for joy and shouted that she wanted the best lamb steak. Eren was also inspired and said that he would be happy with a simple turkey. The main character was puzzled by their behavior and asked if they listened to him at all. A pile of boiled potatoes was laid out on the table. The mood of the main characters instantly dropped. The man who cooked the dishes began to justify that there were a lot of spices in the kitchen, but there were only potatoes from the ingredients. Han glared at him. He remembered that this man claimed that he could cook. The main character checked the characteristics of the man and realized that he was lying, since he didn't even have cooking skills. The lie made him very angry, but he decided to find a new cook before doing anything. Khan turned to a girl named Chloe and appointed her a new chef. A man named Dolph began to object, asking not to rush to Khan's conclusions. She said she would try to cook something else. Khan told him that he was adapting quickly, but warned him that it was better not to lie to him as he would be quickly discovered. He felt sorry for the man, saying that he would close his eyes to it only this time. Dolph shuddered at Han's words. After some time, dinner was finally ready. Although there were only potato dishes on the table, but they were diverse. There were more than 3 kinds of dishes, and it all looked delicious. Jenna exclaimed that the food was delicious and expressed her surprise at such a variety of potato dishes. Chloe confusedly replied that it was thanks to the spices that were in the kitchen. Everyone sat down at the table, and the Khan ordered them to eat and listen to him because he was not going to repeat. He also told it to inform the newcomers, who will not hear because their lives depend on it. It was already night, and Khan told the recruits everything. They were shocked by what they heard and could not believe that they would have to fight. Jenna began to calm them down, saying that she had never fought before getting here, and assuring them that they would cope. The man sitting opposite the main character asked what they should do. His name was Enoch, and he was a carpenter. Khan told him that he and Chloe could help them in another way. Dolph tried to avoid a fight, saying that he could also be a carpenter. Khan warned him with a grin that if he lied again, he would be the first candidate for synthesis, because he would be perfect for this. Dolph paused. Khan explained that professions in the settlement are much safer, but this does not mean that it is worth relaxing. The number of seats was limited, and if a character with better skills than them appears, then the hero can be removed from office and sent into battle. From the next day, the quiet life ended. In the training arena, Han was surprised that only 3 guys came: Hyde, Hansen, and Dika, about 20 years old. Jenna replied that the others were probably scared and were looking for a place to hide. Khan said he was already tired of sparring with Eren and wanted to try something new. The 3 of them attacked the Khan, but even so they were defeated. Khan noticed that Eren had a bad influence on them because they started calling him Henim. The difference in characteristics between them was too big, about 7-8 points, which was about like the gap between a child and an adult. On Earth, such a sharp increase in strength would be simply impossible. At this time, Jenna raised her skill basics of archery to the 5th level, and possession of a dagger to the 2nd. Eren's spear-wielding skill was also at the 2nd level, but he did not progress further, although he trained the most. 3 newcomers have mastered the skill swordsmanship to the 1st level. Their development strongly coincided, most likely due to the same age. The three of them were sitting on the ground, beaten and exhausted. One of the guys noticed that Heimin was very strong, to which Han replied that it was natural because his level was higher. However, the guys did not understand what level he was talking about. Han explained that they would soon understand everything. Despite their weakness, Han believed that the three newcomers were better than those who were hiding at home. Soon the master summoned 10 more heroes. And this time Eren and the others coped with everything without the main character. Only one person died during the selection. Jenna noticed that their group was getting bigger. Khan explained that this would continue. The girl asked him why the master did not take them to the 5th floor, since a lot of time had passed since the last sweep. Han knew why the master didn't do this, since the 5th floor would have a sharp jump in difficulty. He replied that the master had not yet decided who to add to the group. Every 5 floors, the difficulty increases dramatically, something like a boss level. In such places, even the main character could not be sure that he would survive. Khan knew that despite the selection, training, and so on, many of the heroes would die. Jenna didn't need to know how much the difficulty would increase. Fighting heroes: Jenna Kuria, Khan Islat, Eren Delcat, Hyde, Hansen and Dika. Support heroes: Ina